Chapter 616. Now in the lakeside area, OK was undoubtedly the most worried one. Not only had he suffered a blow to his reputation, but he had also been fatally denied in his profession. Black Wolf's experienced senior brother was the master of mysticism that he had mentioned. Although he didn't know what was going on, he had appeared with Fei Jin and endorsed her. This had already caused the young and promising vice president OK to suffer his first major failure in life. Xie Junping couldn't bear to look at OK's current appearance. He was also worried that this fellow would say some stupid words and do stupid things after being provoked over and over again. Xie Junping pulled Luo Nan along the lakeside and walked a bit further away, eliminating the greatest variable in this place. Luo Nan allowed OK to pull him along. It seemed that Luo Nan didn't have any special feelings towards Quebec. Luo Nan felt that OK was a bit absent-minded. Luo Nan's gaze was cast towards the dark depths of the lake, but it was unfocused. Where did you and Ruiwen go? Researching a difficult problem. Even electromagnetic waves can't penetrate it? Auntie Luo called me and Shuele. By the way, aren't you going to cultivate in seclusion alone? Only now did Luo Nan roll his eyes. I can't handle this by myself. Aren't you adjusting the exoskeleton? It looks good to me. Other than that, what else is there to do? At this time, Shuele and Ruiwen also came over and stood together with them. Xie Junping was only able to clearly see what Ruiwen was wearing when he got closer. Not to mention anything else, just those torn trousers and exposed snow-white leg muscles made him suck in a breath of cold air. He didn't dare to say anything else. Luo Nan turned to Ruiwen and said, "You've been tormented quite a bit today. Go home and rest. Oh, you were a little exhausted just now. Don't walk by yourself. Let Brother Ping send you back." Xie Junping's train of thought was a bit erratic, and his reaction was half a beat slower. Before he could even open his mouth to reply, Ruiwen had already shook her head. "I can still continue." Luo Nan refused her. "There's no need to take risks. Plus, today's harvest is enough for me to properly digest and absorb for a while." Junior Nan. Someone opened their mouth to greet him, cutting into Luo Nan's small circle. "Oh, Senior Fei." The one who spoke was none other than Fei Jin. This girl, who had just made a dazzling entrance, abandoned the disgraced OK and walked over with a smile. She wanted to extend her hand and hook Luo Nan's arm like before, but Luo Nan's indifferent gaze stopped her. Clearly, he was not prepared to continue having intimate actions with her. He wasn't even prepared to say thank you. Fei Jin was good at socializing, and because of that, she was good at reading people. Her first contact with Luo Nan's gaze was enough for her to know that her social target tonight lacked patience. Forcefully starting a conversation would only backfire on her. As for the matter of helping just now, there was no need to even mention it. Why would a top-notch genius of the inner world need someone else's help to stand up for him? Therefore, Fei Jin didn't have any thoughts of being arrogant. Her friendly approach didn't work, so she immediately lowered her posture even more. She put her palms together and carefully begged, "I might have been a little abrupt just now. It's not easy for me to meet you, so I have something that I would like to ask for your help with." She didn't even wait for Luo Nan to ask. She immediately spoke. "I hope to be able to cooperate with Junior in this activity." Activities? The first thing that came to Luo Nan's mind was the Mystic Arts-themed week event that would open next week. He had always had a dispensable attitude towards this. "Since it's a club activity, I'll definitely participate." "Junior brother, you've misunderstood. I meant the grand banquet party." Fei Jin's enunciation of the last few words was a bit indistinct. But at the same time, she raised her wrist. The virtual dial that seemed to interweave with garbled codes clearly indicated what she was referring to. Luo Nan frowned. Fei Jin put her palms together once more and made a small bow a few times. "Junior, this party is really important to me. The task of your male guests, interesting tattoos, focuses on quantity. But for us women, splendid communication, focuses on quality. In that circle, you're the only one that I can find to collaborate with. You're the most outstanding one." A beautiful woman with an extraordinary appearance was cautiously begging for help. From a man's perspective, just the swelling feeling of satisfaction was already an enormous enjoyment. But Luo Nan's eyes didn't even blink. This continued until Fei Jin, who saw that the situation wasn't looking good, raised another condition. If Junior can help me out at the party, the votes that I can gather from the Mystic Arts Research Society will all belong to you, Junior. I don't dare say anything else, but at the very least, I can save you quite a bit of trouble. Luo Nan's eyebrows twitched. This is fine. Such a straightforward attitude caught Fei Jin off guard. She only came back to her senses after they added each other as friends. And by this time, Luo Nan had already directly said goodbye to her and invited her to leave. It was probably because Fei Jin rarely received this kind of treatment. It took a lot of effort for her to maintain her smile without fading. She just left in a bit of a hurry. Xie Junping watched from the side in a daze. Can these two be equal? That's not the point. Luo Nan didn't care whether Fei Jin had gone far or not. He minded his own thoughts and plans. There are too many things that need to be considered. I need to fix my sensing mode in the shortest amount of time possible. Whether it's the society or the feast, I need to save as much trouble as I can. It's better if I can push them off. Xie Junping didn't understand what fixing my sensing mode meant for a time, but he understood Luo Nan's perfunctory attitude towards Fei Jin. Then why did you agree? I didn't want to talk too much. Plus, she understands everything. Luo Nan's unspoken words were. Since Fei Jin had contact with the people of the inner world, she certainly understood Luo Nan's position. She should know what to do and what not to do in her heart. Xie Junping curled his lips. You've explained so much to me. Should I express my honor? Another person appeared on the stage just as Luo Nan finished speaking. It's a great honor to be able to meet Mr. Luo. This time it was Black Wolf Sr. This person's attitude was quite proper compared to Fei Jin. When he bowed in greeting, he had a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing. My name is Huanhua. I'm a wandering magician. Mr. Huanhua. Luo Nan maintained a basic level of respect towards his fellow practitioners of the inner world. Mr. Luo's hypotheses and reasoning regarding the mental world are too brilliant. Especially the cage theory. Whether it's inside or outside, it possesses limitless potential. It truly is a genius idea. I believe that this will be a brand new entry point for humans to explore, temper, and entrust their souls. Huanhua appeared to be a mature and steady person from the outside, but he didn't skimp on praising the contents of Luo Nan's lecture. He gave off the feeling that he approved of Luo Nan from the bottom of his heart. Luo Nan had seen this sort of attitude many times since his lecture on the 14th. He was able to face it calmly and gave his thanks once more. Huanhua knew his limits very well. He didn't have any intentions of having a deep conversation with Luo Nan. He just said, I've always wanted to personally experience Mr. Tang Luo's soul lessons. Unfortunately, I will be leaving Xia City tonight. I can only leave this wish for the future. Huanhua bowed once more after he finished speaking, and walked away in a straightforward and efficient manner. Black Wolf, who was following behind him, greeted Luo Nan, Shui Lei, and the others before leaving with Huanhua. Chapter 617. The meeting that came and went in a hurry was a bit anticlimactic. Fei Jin, Mirage Fire, and Black Wolf were silent the entire way. Each had their own thoughts. After crossing the winding bridge that cut through the forest, Fei Jin stopped at the head of the South Bank Bridge. She said that she was waiting for a friend. Mirage Fire and Black Wolf tactfully said their goodbyes. After a courteous handover, they concluded the mission of Acumen College. The two prepared to walk through the entrance to the underground parking lot of the South Bank Auditorium. Because it was 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening on a weekend, there were not many people around. It was very quiet. Coupled with the outstanding perception of ability users, they could still hear Fei Jin's voice from dozens of meters away. It was different from the soft and low tone before, and it sounded a little sharp. This sort of thing is meaningless. Black Wolf turned his head to look. Under the illumination of the stone lanterns at the head of the bridge, he could see that Fei Jin was talking to someone through her wristband. The atmosphere was quite tense. He raised his eyebrows. Tihei. It looks like this lady had a hard time restraining herself. Don't worry about other people's business. Mirage Fire didn't even turn his head. He just walked straight ahead. Black Wolf shrugged. I just find it strange. This mission is too simple. We are the consultants of the Starry Sky Club. How can we just say these few words from beginning to end? There's nothing for me to do. Maybe it's better to stay at the training center at night. Mirage Fire turned his head to look at him. Isn't dealing with Mr. Luo the most difficult thing in Xia City? If you aren't with us, who knows how much more effort it would take to get rid of this misunderstanding. Luonan. I heard from Ying that he's usually a weak otaku, but he always overreacts to external stimuli. He's probably the type that doesn't understand the rules of doing things. He acts completely according to his own emotions. Mirage Fire lowered his head and laughed. Mr. Luo is a universally recognized master of perception. Do you think he can hear us across the river? Black Wolf grinned. He's not that petty. Though he said this, Black Wolf changed the subject. Senior, you're leaving tonight, right? I'll take you to the airport. I would have taken you even if you didn't mention it. At least help me return the rental car. Also, I'm not going to the airport. I'm going to the dock. The order has made some last-minute arrangements. They need me to go on a mission in the seas outside of Xia City. If things go smoothly, I might be able to make a detour to Ocean City and take a plane to the New World from there. Black Wolf replied with an, "Oh," and did not take it too seriously. Ability users like them would always have some strange things to do. Then I'll go with you to the dock and return your car to the car rental company. Actually, Black Wolf knew that the car rental shops in Xia City had value-added services such as driving or remote summoning services. However, chatting with senior brother Mirage Flame for a while, and listening about soul cultivation techniques was always a good idea. The two of them found the flying car in the underground parking lot. This time, Black Wolf sat in the driver's seat. When the car followed the instructions and entered the exit lane, the wind whistled behind them, and a silver-gray supercar swept past them. The side window of the sports car was open, and they could see the fashionable woman in the driver's seat. It was Fei Jin, who had just bid farewell to them not long ago. The air currents from the sports car blew her long, curly hair, making her look dazzling and charming. However, how annoyed was she that she had to drive so fast in the underground parking lot. I hope she won't give us a bad review when she gets back. Don't worry. She wasn't the one who issued the mission. Mirage Flame said and told Black Wolf the address they were going to. Black Wolf went through it in his mind and said curiously, "That's not a port. A private dock." 40 minutes later, Black Wolf drove the car into the private dock area that Mirage Flame spoke of. This was actually a seaside resort villa area. One could hear the sound of the tide rustling on the coast. The rhythm was distinct, and the place was gentle. In summer, this place would be a golden beach, a tourist attraction. Unfortunately, due to the season, the villa area appeared rather deserted. There were not many lights. Black Wolf drove the car into the villa area under Mirage Flame's guidance. The journey was smooth and unimpeded. It was clear that Mirage Flame had access to this place. This was very normal but also a bit strange. Black Wolf looked to both sides. Where do I get on the boat? I didn't see where the dock was just now. Hey, look over there. Under the illumination of the car's headlights, the silver-gray streamlined body of the car was rather eye-catching. Black Wolf felt that this car was very familiar. He was a member of the Xia City branch operation team, so he had a very good memory. He looked at the license plate and concluded, "It's that Miss Fei. It's that Miss Fei who's been suppressed miserably. What a coincidence. Is she here to meet her lover? Don't worry about others." Mirage Flame signaled Black Wolf to stop the car. The two got off the car one after another. Then Mirage Flame pointed to the detached villa next to them. "This is it." Black Wolf laughed in spite of himself. "Senior, are you driving this house to the sea?" Mirage Flame responded seriously. "This is the ticket hall." Huh. Black Wolf didn't understand. He just followed Mirage Flame subconsciously. Mirage Flame was very familiar with this place. He also had the corresponding access. He crossed the front yard in 2 or 3 steps, and opened the front door of the villa. The lights in the villa were always on. After the door opened, the gentle light seeped out from the room and elongated Mirage Flame's shadow. The shadow extended to Black Wolf's feet. A secret base, Black Wolf mumbled. He already had a guess in his mind. Mirage flame didn't go to the sea through proper channels. This was nothing. This was normal in the inner world. Black Wolf was even a bit happy. Being able to follow him here meant that in Mirage Flame's eyes, he already had the qualifications to enter the villa. He walked through the door, and before he could look at the decorations inside, Mirage Flame suddenly remembered something. I left my tool bag in the car. I'll go get it. Forget it. You don't know which one it is. Give me the key. Sit in the living room for a while. There should be fruits there. Mirage Flame took the key and walked back. Black Wolf shrugged. Only then did he see that the main hall of the villa was a hollow structure. The first and second floors were connected by a circular staircase. It was very spacious and spacious. It would be a pity if it was left empty. Huh? At this moment, Black Wolf suddenly heard a familiar voice. It was shouting in an intense tone. These tests are meaningless. There's no meaning in them at all. Don't you understand? I'm not his type. His attitude is just perfunctory. Black Wolf was stunned. Then a low and pleasant female voice rang out. Of course there is meaning in the tests. The importance that person places on gear, and the withered tree sandbar, are all points that can be used. Furthermore, you have a nominal connection with him. So you know it's nominal? I'm sorry, but I can't carry that name. At the same time, I have my reservations about your recent work arrangements. I will report this to the relevant authorities. As the voice spoke, high heels stomped heavily on the floor. A certain lady, fine, it was Fei Jean, who he had already met many times tonight. She stormed out of a room on the second floor. She strode to the staircase, but she stopped. His eyes met the Black Wolf's in the completely empty main hall. Black Wolf's mind went blank. He instinctively wanted to explain. But in the next moment, there was a slight gap between their gazes. It was also at this moment that a strong sense of fear rapidly spread from her eyes to her entire face. Not good. Chapter 6:18. At the staircase on the second floor, Fei Jean had witnessed a creepy and cruel sneak attack scene from beginning to end. Moreover, the two main characters in this scene had only parted ways with her less than an hour ago. She watched as the middle-aged man named Huanho pretended to leave and then return. He approached Hei Lang's back like a ghost and locked his throat. Fei Jean felt that she was experiencing a nightmare herself. Half a second later, Huanho raised his head. His gaze was calm, but it was clearly filled with the coldest elements. Under his gaze, Fei Jin's throat seemed to be strangled by an invisible hand. She could not make a sound. Only fear and instinct drove her to turn around and flee in the direction from which she had come. But the moment she turned around, a face filled her entire field of vision. It was so close that she could only see a pair of charming, narrow eyes that were as calm and cold as Huanho's. Then, a hand strangled her neck, and a familiar voice entered her ears. It's okay if you don't want to take this mission. Someone else will take over your work. You can take some time off. It's Christmas. I'll grant you a long vacation, okay? A long vacation? No. Fei Jean finally saw the face in front of her clearly. Hatred and even more intense fear filled her chest. She wanted to struggle, but the other party exerted his strength before she could. An irresistible force came, causing her body to fall backward and hit the fence behind her. Then she flipped and hung in the air, her head spinning. Fei Jean wanted to scream out of instinct, but the dry and warm sensation on her throat was clearly magical. It firmly sealed the last bit of strength in her vocal cords. She could only open her eyes wide and let the decorative background of the main hall of the villa and the familiar yet strange face on the second floor twist and weave together. Finally, the bizarre scenery and the corresponding fear broke the string of her will. Before she could touch the ground, the darkness had already drowned her. Downstairs, Huanho caught Fei Jean, who had fallen down, and placed her on the sofa near the fireplace. Then he lifted the plush carpet that covered the area from the main hall door to the spiral staircase. Under the beautiful fabric, there was a flat layer of tiles. However, the structure of this layer of tiles looked very complicated. Every tile had a different shape, but they were joined together seamlessly, forming a complex and strange graphic structure. The internal structure of this area was indescribable. It was a long and narrow rhombus shape. Phantom Fire placed Black Wolf, who was still unconscious, at a sharp corner of the diamond-shaped area. He occupied another spot, about 6 meters away from Black Wolf. At this time on the second floor, the sound of heels hitting the ground could be heard again. Another figure appeared on the railing. However, Huanhua didn't even look in that direction. After everything was arranged properly, he took off his clothes and sat down with his legs crossed. His hands formed a seal, and he began to chant an incantation in a low voice. As the low and hoarse voice flowed out, the space in the main hall of the villa seemed to ripple slightly. The light was distorted, forming a looming three-dimensional structure in the void. At the same time, it looked like a translucent spider web that was shot out of thin air and connected the Phantom Fire and the Black Wolf. The incantation came to an end. The diamond-shaped area on the ground and the invisible threads of light in the air had already built a complex and complete structure together. Huanhua's eyes were wide open. He spat out the powerful incantation, as if he had spat out all the air in his body. His entire body was shrunk, making him look strange and demonic. However, he didn't maintain this image for long. Scorching flames shot out from his mouth where he had just spat out the incantation, and from the gaps of his eyes, ears, and nose. The flames surrounded Huanhua's head. Then they moved downward, past his shoulders, chest, abdomen, and legs. Wherever they passed, the skin and flesh were like the highest level of fuel, emitting pure light and heat. In the depths of the flames, there was a silver luster. The flames moved from the top to the bottom, and from the bottom to the top. When they returned to the top of his head, they suddenly turned into a mottled ray of light that faintly turned into a rainbow. They were placed between Huanhua's head and Black Wolf's head. With a muffled bang, the flames dissipated. The place where Huanhua had been sitting was no longer a human. What was left was a metal object that looked like a human. Apart from that, there were no other traces. After a few seconds, the unconscious Black Wolf on the ground suddenly shuddered. His entire body began to twitch slightly. This state lasted for more than a minute. Then Black Wolf opened his eyes. He moved his fingers a little, twisted his neck, and then sat up. His body swayed back and forth, as if he was still dizzy, but his eyes were clear. After a short pause, he slowly got up. Ignoring the weakness in his legs, he slowly walked to the remains of Huanhua. He dismantled the metal frame with familiarity, turned it into a set of parts, and put them into his tool bag. After doing all this, Black Wolf, or Huanhua, cleaned up the scene and put the carpet back in place. Then he pushed the door open, started the car, and disappeared into the night. From the beginning to the end, he didn't care about Fei Jin, who was by the fireplace. It was as if this was the entire mission. As the car drove away, the seaside holiday villa was once again submerged in silence. But this atmosphere didn't last long. The crystal light shone down on the unconscious Fei Jin's face, reflecting the luster of youth. "That's great. You're as young as a flower. What do you think of the target I chose for you?" There were two figures at the top of the stairs on the second floor. One of them had just pushed Fei Jin down the stairs. She leaned against the fence, her camel-colored long windbreaker open, revealing a snow-white shirt and dark pants. Her short hair was thin, making her look bright and crisp. But her voluptuous body curves, as well as the 12-centimeter stilettos on her feet, still highlighted a strong feminine quality. Beside her, Inlo wore a very ordinary professional suit. Although her looks, figure, and youthfulness were superior, she still couldn't compare to this person's carefree and easygoing nature. The Blood Flame Order was currently facing a grim situation, including this person's attitude and behavior, made it impossible for her to be casual. So Inlo glared at him sternly. "Multifaceted? What do you mean?" Multifaceted smiled in response. "As you requested, I'm fighting for a chance to get close to Mr. Luo. Don't increase your physical body unless necessary." I thought this kind of simple logic didn't need to be emphasized. "Then why did you go through me?" "Through the manager of the Starry Sky Club. A person with extremely complicated social connections?" When Multifaceted, or rather, Sun Jiai, appeared in this villa, she was no longer the manager of the leisure club, but a well-known broker who roamed the various forces in the inner world. Aside from attentive service, she also had her own way of doing things when dealing with clients. You must know that the current Xia City branch is still in a loose on the outside but tight on the inside. Any ability user who can interact with a target for a long period of time is the result of going through a sieve several times. So, I believe that the true don't increase your physical body is to borrow the help of relevant personnel who have previously made contact with you. Chapter 619. Sun Jiai pointed at Fei Jin by the fireplace. She is a student of Acumen College. At the same time, she is one of the investors of the Mystic Arts Research Society. She has a relatively close relationship with the outer circle of the inner world. She can have close contact with Mr. Luo at the school and at the banquet organized recently. Moreover, the distance between them is very appropriate. You can talk about something through her. You can also do something through her. You can treat her as a communication software, but she can also be used as a more effective tool. With such a buffer, it would be great if the effect of contact is positive. Even if the effect is negative, as long as you rationally control your limits, it won't have an excessive impact on your relationship with Mr. Luo. Yin Lu wasn't convinced by her. Sun Jiai smiled as she faced the fierce and murderous gaze. She pointed at her own forehead. Of course, I won't deny that there are some other calculations involved. This is because this Miss Fei has many illustrious statuses. She is also a secret observer of the LCRF. She is also a newly promoted agent. This has formed a certain restraint and conflict with my duties in Xia City. Right now, the situation over at the Starry Sky Club is complicated. This new agent has always wanted to take over my position. She has also been secretly gathering information that is disadvantageous to me. I don't have any plans to resign for now, so I'll teach her a lesson. The curve of Yin Li's lips was like an unsheathed scimitar. She took a step back and continued to draw a clear line between herself and Sun Jiai. Unfortunately, we cannot accept this reason. Sun Jiai shrugged. It shouldn't be your turn to make this decision. Is that right? Madam? Behind Yin Lu. The shadow formed by the clash of light and substance shook slightly. Madame Halder's voice drifted out. It was like silk, yet it was clear and discernible. You can try to convince me, boss. Yin Lu was very shocked. Why would Madame Halder, who was dozens of kilometers away, suddenly use a secret technique and directly communicate with Sun Jiai? Because of this, she quickly shut her mouth. She didn't want to sing a different tune from her own first ablatum in front of outsiders. The situation of the communication within the empty villa changed. Sun Jiai stood up straight for the first time. She gave a slight bow towards Yin Lu. Actually, she was giving a polite and appropriate greeting to Madame Halder's divine sense in the shadow behind Yin Lu. I would be happy to expand on my ideas and advance my work. Do not increase the physical unless necessary. Humans tend to interpret and drive the world in a more efficient manner, but in fact, the scope of our willful use of this mode is very small, and only exists in a narrow area of our control. Like now. Speaking up to this point, she suddenly changed the topic. Mr. Luo is under the protection of the Xia City branch. He is in close contact with Mr. Luo. He is under the protection of layers upon layers of the Xia City branch. Recently, there were very few people who made such a high technical request, and the reward was sufficiently generous. That's why I'm giving you a corresponding value-added service for free. The soul transfer array here will allow you to save more effort and be more discreet. Out of professional consideration, I must mention the sponsor of the product, a secret organization that has been quite active recently, the Soul Cult. Soul Cult? Yin Lu repeated subconsciously. Sun Jiai smiled. Yes, the Soul Cult. If you are willing or must use this product, I can give a further explanation. In the shadows, Lady Halder said coldly. No, there is no need. I just need a reason to continue our partnership. I'm a broker. I don't presume any standpoint, and I possess sufficient professional ethics. That's enough. Sun Jiai spread her hands. She seemed innocent and free and at ease, but she could only shrug when faced with the gaze of disregard. Fine. Sometimes, I tend to make my work simple. I combine and reorganize matters that are related to secrets, and I advance them as a whole. Just like tonight. You wish to obtain an opportunity to make contact with Mr. Luo. The Soul Cult requests an opportunity to infiltrate the Xia City branch. At the same time, the Soul Cult is very interested in making contact with you. They even have plans and needs that are further advanced. I use the physical of an event to coordinate and combine these three matters to achieve the greatest efficiency. I believe that this is a true example of do not increase the physical unless necessary. Is that so? In the shadows, Lady Halder's thoughts turned bone-piercingly cold. You attempted to direct our actions, and directly exposed our secret intentions. Is this what you call professional ethics? Inla didn't say a word as she acted as a long-distance carrier. Dark red flowing light shuttled and interweaved within her pupils. Her aura was abnormally withdrawn. She had already completed her preparations to attack at any moment. I believe that this is the foundation of our many years of cooperation. It's the second value-added service that I'll give you for free. Madam, you actually don't know that the Soul Cult has their eyes on you? Flames swirled within Li's eyes, but her feet didn't move an inch. Perhaps her thoughts were the same. Sun Jiai continued to speak. Perhaps the Soul Cult feels embarrassed about this situation, so they asked me to bring you a message. Right now, the Blood Flame Order isn't having an easy time. Perhaps it's time for them to look for allies, external aid, or even to find someone to rely on. You're multifaceted. Inlu subconsciously rebuked. Sun Jiai took a step back. Her smile remained. I'm just a broker. I'm just a messenger. Aside from that, I have no other standpoint. Madam, if you consider their suggestions, or if you simply need more information regarding the Soul Cult, you can find me. The method of contact remains the same, and the price can be discounted. As she spoke, Sun Jiai leisurely walked down the stairs. When she reached the bottom, she turned back. Although there's no conclusive evidence, based on our current analysis, it's very likely that Mr. Luo has the ability to sense things in a large area. Even though this place is still considered far from his current location, I still suggest that we don't cause too much of a commotion. The soul transfer array is a good choice, but if Madam insists, the Blood Flame Order's secret technique shouldn't be a problem. Oh, that's right. Before Fei Jin fainted, she had already accumulated enough fear. It's a good prerequisite for the execution of your esteemed Order's secret technique. For this reason, I even self-destructed. This is also the third value-added service that I'm giving you for free. I hope Madam will remember it. After saying these words, Sun Jiai left the villa. She left a large amount of doubts and strange elements behind, allowing them to fully ferment and constantly change into new components. A few seconds later, Madame Halder's thoughts manifested. Inlo. Boss. Secret orders aren't just any random person. Yes, boss. The establishment of every order is supported by at least one extraordinary or an existence close to one. Yes. Otherwise, the order would have no foundation in the Abyss district. Chapter 620. Sister over here. Tianqi stood up and greeted Tianxi from a corner of the bar. Tianxi also saw her cousin. She carefully bypassed the bustling stream of people and walked over. I haven't seen your shadow for almost a month. Are you also in seclusion? Tianqi pulled out the chair where his jacket was placed and invited his cousin to take a seat. He complained incessantly, but the target of his attack was quite subtle. Tianxi laughed. Before she could speak, Tianqi had already noticed the relaxed and joyful expression on her face. He lightly slapped the table. It looks like there are no problems on Grandma Pan's side. Yes, I've received the official notice. Although there's still half a year before school officially starts, I'll be following the project starting next month. Congratulations, congratulations. Grandma Pan's graduate student quota is enough to make people fight over it every year. I can only say that I was lucky. Tianxi didn't want to talk about this topic. She called over the waitress dressed as a witch. A cup of mocha, thank you. The waitress recognized Tianxi. She apologized softly. Senior Sister Tian, the coffee is sold out. Then a cup of hot cocoa. The waitress accepted the order and left. Tianqi rushed to claim credit. See, it wasn't easy for me to save you a seat. Tianqi's gaze swept across the corner of the bar. This was the public activity area located on the second floor of Northern Rock Gear. It was close to the sandbar waterway and faced the scenery at the bottom of the lake. It was originally a good place to cultivate the body and mind, but the surging stream of people made it seem more like a popular tourist spot. Your society's theme week is pretty good. You know, it's not purely based on the theme week. Right now, this place is almost bursting with people. I really miss the days when it was just Luo Nan and the others, even though I didn't come here many times. Tianqi sighed. He consciously lowered his voice. Sister, did you come here to find Luo Nan? It's not easy to see him right now. I made an appointment. This kind of conversation shouldn't have happened between schoolmates, but the Tian siblings felt that it was very normal. That's good. Tianqi suddenly cried out before he could finish speaking. Behind me. Look at the lake. Tianqi subconsciously turned her head and saw a huge and flat body slanted at a certain angle in the lake of chaos, separated by tempered glass to the side of the public activity area. It silently streaked past, blocking the line of sight of everyone in the bar. There was no source of light at the bottom of the lake, only the lights from the public area projected into the lake. Under the illumination of the lights, the demonic fish that looked like giant bats were showing off their wingspans that were more than 20 meters long and their pale lower abdomen, which had hideous mouthparts, to the tourists. Especially when the demonic fish turned around, its 10-meter-long thin tail of scales slammed into the tempered glass. The heavy impact seemed to make the entire glass wall tremble. The tail even carried its own electric flames. Every time it jumped and flashed, it seemed to burn the hearts of the onlookers. Many men and women cried out in fear and excitement. Tianqi stared blankly at this scene. Even though she had been mentally prepared, when she saw this demonic fish, the terrifying scene from 2 months ago seemed to replay itself. She couldn't help but shiver, her cheeks almost draining of blood. In comparison, Tianqi had seen a lot more, and he didn't know what his cousin had experienced in Ocean Sky Cloud City. He let out a sigh of satisfaction. It's different from what I saw in Ocean Sky Cloud City. It seems like they could break through the glass at any time. Actually, I don't think any theme week can compare to this thing going around in a circle. Sis, are you okay? Tianqi seemed to wake up from a dream, but it wasn't good to turn her head and let her cousin see her current expression. She could only speak randomly. This stingray is the one from Ocean Sky Cloud City. Yes, that's the one. It's grown quite a bit. Who says it isn't? I heard that its wingspan has grown by nearly a third since it was first captured, and its growth has been concentrated in the past 2 months. It must have eaten and drunk well in Ocean Sky Cloud City and fattened up. The stingray swaggered around behind the tempered glass for a while, then turned and entered the depths of the lake where people couldn't see. It left the ground full of exclamations of admiration. However, no one here knew that among them, there was someone who had previously come into close contact with this aberration. The kind that was almost eaten. Tianqi turned around and subconsciously picked up the hot drink on the table. Only then did she realize that her hands had become cold, and her legs were even trembling. But at the same time, her heart was boiling hot, and then a vermilion blush stained her face. This was also a mixture of fear and excitement. Her mood wasn't much different from the others present, but it was more deeply colored by memories, or perhaps it was sublimated by expectations. Last time in Ocean Sky Cloud City, this ferocious monster had used its long electric tail to wrap around her legs, and it could tear her to pieces in the next second. But it was also from that incident that she truly glimpsed the scene behind the scenes of today's world, and touched upon a magical corner of the inner world. She took small sips of the hot cocoa to calm herself down, then asked, "This mutant should be very dangerous. Why did it move here?" It said that the family that left the stingray in Ocean Sky Cloud City couldn't afford the rental and feeding fees, so they sold this thing at a high price. The buyer was someone in our society, but no one knew that this person was willful enough to directly move this monster here as an ornamental fish. You don't know. What? Nothing. I'm just a little curious as to who would spend so much money to open up their connections and place a mutant in the jungle of the North Bank. Professor Wu and the others can't bear to see this happen. You're talking about Professor Pan's husband, right? He's probably going to go mad with anger. Apparently, he took advantage of Professor Pan's trip to act first and report later. It's hard to say whether or not he'll be able to stay here for a long time. Tianqi was quite open-minded. I think it's most likely temporary. It just so happens that the theme week needs a gimmick. Speaking of which, Vice President O's Elusis apparatus replay program has already collapsed. I heard that Luo Nan was the one who stopped it. Now that the stingray is here, no one would have the guts to run to the lake and cause a ruckus. From this point of view. You understand. Yeah, we all understand. Her slender fingers were placed lightly on Tianqi's shoulder. They were like jade tubes, yet they carried the pressure of a steel pipe. Tianqi jumped in fright. He reflexively wanted to get up, but he was pressed down to the point where he couldn't move. Tianqi stood up and greeted the mature and sexy woman behind Tianqi. Hello, Miss Cat Eyes. You're welcome. I'm just an errand boy. I'm in charge of delivering and receiving messages. Cat Eyes very naturally pulled Tianqi out of his seat. She used this willful manipulation method to indicate to the young man to go do what he needed to do. Tianqi more or less had some understanding of this woman. He didn't say much. He winked at Tianqi, shrunk into the back of the crowd and soon disappeared. Cat Eyes was the famous queen of nightclubs in Xia City. She really liked to join in on the fun, but she hated the bustling environment of gear because it brought her unnecessary workload. So she made a long story short. Luo Nan, Gao Meng, and Papercut. Oh, you know the one in the back. They're discussing some technical issues and forgot about the time. If you're willing to wait, I can take you to the 6th floor to rest. Actually, I just want to help an elder send an invitation. Elder? It's my instructor, Professor Pan 1. I know. Luo Nan's mother's instructor, right? From now on, you'll be his teacher's aunt. That's not necessary. Tianqi was still a bit reserved when facing Cat Eyes. She wasn't used to chatting and joking with her. Okay, I understand. Come with me. Won't I disturb him? Tianqi was still a bit worried. You've already agreed to wait. What's there to disturb? Cat Eyes smiled and stood up. She led Tianqi around the stream of people and slowly walked down the fire escape passageway. She casually explained, right now there are too many idle people waiting. For the sake of tranquility, the 5th, 6th, and 7th floors have been sealed off from the outside world. It's not too convenient to go in and out. It's not good to have an elevator or something like that. We'll go down the stairs. There'll be a clearance check to get to the 5th floor. It'll be a bit troublesome. You should be prepared. Tianqi grunted in response and subconsciously sucked in a breath. She didn't feel that it would be troublesome. Instead, she felt quite expectant. The two ladies walked down one floor at a time. After passing through 2 floors, the clamor of the public activity area was more or less masked. Only the rhythmic sound of footsteps could be heard in the stairwell. Tianqi slightly adjusted her breathing. She pondered for a moment on what to say when she saw Luo Nan. Actually, she had rehearsed this conversation many times before, but she still couldn't help feeling nervous and anxious at this moment. Tianqi sighed to herself with such a state of mind. What the heart desires, there must be fear. Perhaps this was a type of blinded by greed. It was at this time that Cat Eyes spoke. You want to enter our circle? Tianqi's inner thoughts had been exposed in a single sentence. She subconsciously shivered and raised her head to look. Cat Eyes raised an eyebrow. What's there to be nervous about? It's not like you're a bandit. If you want to do it, just say it. Do you want to become an ability user? The corner of Tianqi's lips twitched. She laughed self-deprecatingly. Anyone can probably tell what I'm thinking. Who was the last person who could tell? Luo Nan? It was Mr. Papercut. Oh. Cat Eyes came to a sudden realization. Though she didn't participate in some matters, she still possessed the relevant information. You've crossed paths with him twice. That's right. The matter with Ocean Sky Cloud City will certainly affect you. You must have seriously considered it for you to be able to endure for so long before saying it. Actually, I didn't say it. Tianxi didn't dare to say these words. She could only nod. Papercut is a rather steady person. He didn't blindly encourage you back then, did he? Tianxi shook her head immediately. The matter with Ocean Sky Cloud City didn't need to be mentioned. She had yet to recover from the shock, causing her memories to be a bit messy. Her memories were especially deep and fuzzy. However, she had a clear memory of the entire matter from the get-together at Aurora Cloud City. She remembered that she had once mustered up the courage to ask Papercut, but he seemed to have intentionally avoided this topic. Cat Eyes snorted. He's quite responsible. His mind is clear. He knows that this is a field where talent is the most important. Talent? Chapter 6:21. Cat Eye's super blunt words caused Tianxi's cheeks to turn pale. She felt as if her feet were covered in lead, unable to lift them up. She unconsciously stopped walking, and Cat Eyes immediately stopped as well. The two stood in the stairwell, and the atmosphere naturally became heavy. Tianxi knew that she had lost her composure, but she was unable to control it. From her perspective, Cat Eyes was undoubtedly giving her a stern warning. Cat Eyes told her not to have wishful thinking and enter the level and domain of the inner world. Okay, perhaps this was also a warning. The problem was that her plans, hopes, and fantasies were all going to turn to ashes just because of a single sentence from Cat Eyes? Miss Cat Eyes. Tianxi spat out the words with great difficulty. I told you. You don't need to be so polite. Cat Eyes turned to the side and crossed her arms over her chest. She looked at Tianxi's expression with interest. I just spoke a few words of truth, that's all. Before Tianxi arrived at Gear, she never imagined that this would be the situation. It must be known that she invested all of her energy into Professor Pan at the end of the year. It wasn't purely for the sake of obtaining a corresponding offer. It was for the sake of saving the country in a roundabout way. She wanted to use her relationship with Professor Pan to further tie herself to Luo Nan's network. On Professor Pan's side, she succeeded and gained the old lady's love and trust. However, when she turned around and wanted to take advantage of the situation to win the final result, she was told, "You simply don't have the qualifications to do so." A few breaths later, Tianxi tried to regain control of her mind, but it was to no avail. It was at this moment that Cat Eye's voice entered her ears once more. Her voice wasn't loud, but she could hear it clearly. Let's not talk about whether or not you can become an ability user. Let me ask you one thing. What is your goal? Goal? Yeah. Do you want to enter a new domain and adventure? Do you want to obtain more capital to live a better life? Do you want to borrow new strength to solve old troubles? Or do you want to satisfy your ambition to continuously improve? Tianxi was a bit stupefied. She didn't know how to respond. Cat Eyes hooked a finger at her and continued down. At the same time, she said with a chuckle, "You can seriously think about it and find your position. Many people yearn to be a star, but when they enter the entertainment circle, all they get is an assistant. The feeling of being served and being served is completely different, right?" Yes. Yes. Tianxi's mind was muddled, and her heart was unsettled. She didn't even know what she was saying. Like a marionette, she followed Cat Eyes step by step. Very soon, they arrived at the sealed entrance. Cat Eyes examined Tianxi's authority step by step and made a record. Then, she brought Tianxi into the forbidden zone that had been sealed off for almost a week. The voice of the artificial intelligence sobered Tianxi up a little. She suddenly discovered that Cat Eye's words were extremely odd. Her heart skipped a beat, and certain words blurted out from her mouth. As long as you have a clear location, you can also serve people. Hee, say that to someone else. This time, Cat Eyes did not even turn her head. She only waved her hand. There's no need to tell me too much. I'm not your life coach. It's just that in the past few years, I've seen a lot of people in and out of the industry, especially the mentality of a bunch of people in the periphery, so I decided to chat with them and watch the show. Tianxi opened her mouth, but was unable to continue the conversation. However, she was able to confirm Cat Eye's playful attitude. But she couldn't bring herself to be angry at all. On the contrary, the hope that had already been extinguished sprouted from the ashes, growing and spreading. We're here. This place is quite spacious. A lot of equipment hasn't been shipped in yet. There's no reception room or anything like that. I'll just lead you to the end. In any case, they should be done chatting soon. As she spoke, Cat Eyes had already brought Tian-Si to the underground 7th floor of gear. There was practically no difference in the layout of this place from a few days ago. There was a large expanse of spacious area, and only the innermost corner had the corresponding experimental equipment set up. Tian-Si saw Luo Nan and the other two sitting on the ground in a very casual manner in the innermost side of the experimental area. Their hands seemed to be fiddling with stacks of paper drafts and the like. The color of the paper was clearly yellow. It was quite peculiar. Cat Eyes stopped 20 meters away from the three. Let's wait here. If you're tired, you can do the same as them. No need. Tian-Si shook her head. Her gaze wavered a bit. It would fall on Luo Nan for a moment, and then it would turn back to Cat Eyes for a moment. As for her state of mind and thoughts, they only became more turbulent. Cat Eyes suddenly turned her head. She gave a smile that was not a smile. Actually, I wouldn't have said these words to you 2 weeks ago. Then. After all, the situation is different now. Look at that person. Who? Mr. Papercut? Tian-Si followed the direction of Cat Eyes' finger and locked onto the target, but she still did not understand the deep meaning behind it. 2 weeks ago, I saw this person. He was probably destined to be a support for his entire life. He couldn't deal damage. He couldn't support the overall situation. It would be hard for him to raise his cultivation and status. This is the result of the limitations of his talent. But now things are a bit different. Cat Eyes really dared to speak without the slightest scruple. At this time, Papercut was completely engrossed in conversing with Luo Nan. He would wave his hand and gesture from time to time. His face was full of emotions, but he turned a deaf ear to the evaluation of others. Tian-Si did not know what Papercut and Luo Nan were talking about, but she saw Luo Nan scratching his ears and cheeks. Luo Nan was so happy that he couldn't contain himself. Tian-Si knew that it was certainly an extremely positive matter. Tian-Si naturally had a simple inference when she combined what Cat Eyes had said before. Could it be that what Luo Nan was talking about right now was a method that could cross the barrier of talent? Tian-Si's heart thumped loudly, and she unconsciously took a step forward. She managed to control herself with great difficulty, but she still pricked up her ears and did her best to catch the bits and pieces of conversation that flowed over. The problem was that she had no foundation in the domain of ability users, let alone Luo Nan and the other two being far away. Even if Luo Nan and the other two were close at hand, it would be impossible for her to understand what Luo Nan was saying. In a corner of the laboratory, Gao Meng, a B-rank ability user, had long since noticed Cat Eyes and Tian-Si coming over. He shot a glance over and chuckled at Luo Nan. You have an appointment with a beautiful woman? Private business, Luo Nan responded, but he realized that he had gone off topic. Before Luo Nan could explain, Papercut, who was sitting cross-legged and grimacing at the paper talismans scattered on the ground, raised his head in a daze. Is there a problem? Luo Nan and Gao Meng shook their heads together. Now that we've reached this step, it's basically quite appropriate. Gao Meng snapped his fingers, and a paper talisman on the ground quietly floated into the air. It spontaneously combusted without fire. The flame was like the finger of a god. It danced a few times, and in the blink of an eye, the paper talisman was sculpted and twisted into the shape of a ring within the light of the flames. The ring's diameter was slightly thicker than Gao Meng's wrist. It floated down like a feather, and was caught by Gao Meng's hand. Tian-Si was stupefied from watching, but Papercut was eager to get into action. Let's try again? Who wants to try? Luo Nan simply responded. Don't bother two masters for the same thing. Chapter 622. After 1,000th of a second, Gao Meng's consciousness cut into the incorporeal and majestic fortress in the depths of the storm. The energy storm surged ceaselessly in the outside world. There seemed to be a path of wind, but there seemed to be no pattern to speak of. There was only pure destructive power wreaking havoc. Any ability user who could enter the abyssal region had to resist and contend against this destructive attack before they could make a move. But ever since the space fortress was erected, the configuration built by the combined efforts of over 1,000 people grew from nothing. It grew stronger bit by bit, using a steady and conservative method to gradually expand its domain and deepen its imprint. This was a continuous process. In the overall design of the Ring of Blood Intent, a seed, a tender sprout, grew and catalyzed step by step, gradually becoming a towering tree that could resist the destructive storm. Just this alone made the Ring of Blood Intent, which Luo Nan promoted, ranked among the greatest inventions of the inner world. Gao Meng did not need to borrow external force to mentally wander in the center of the abyssal region. But how could a short period of time, measured in seconds, compare to the stability and safety of the fortress? The space fortress constructed by the Ring of Blood Intent was already the top choice of the ability users of Xia City. Even if they had nothing to do here, it was good to be able to admire the scenery of the abyssal region and watch the gods fight. Whether it was Gao Meng or the other ability users of Xia City, they were all having fun in this space fortress. But who would have thought that its inventor was no longer satisfied with his current achievements? He was currently attempting to make changes to it with a high degree of passion and urgency. The telepathic guidance is very clear. It still maintains its independence. It doesn't affect others. Gao Meng lightly scratched the thin talisman paper outside his bracelet. He felt the special ink fuse with the paper. It naturally guided the interference power to transform into an even finer and more exquisite power structure. It was just as Luo Nan said. Don't bother two masters for one thing. As the representative of the ancient talisman school of the inner world, he was already familiar with the entire process of using talismans. No one was more proficient in this path than he was. Although Papercut was an expert in this field, there was still an insurmountable gap in his cultivation realm. Look at the main point. Cat Eyes lowered her voice to an extremely low level. She hinted to Tianxi. That fake Taoist priest is a fierce person in our area. He sells talisman paper every day. But now he's like an obedient student in front of Luo Nan. What does this mean? Tianxi said. She didn't know how to respond. In the end, it was Cat Eyes who broke through the paper window. This shows that the one surnamed Luo has a thick thigh that everyone wants to hug. The weak wanted to break through, and the strong wanted to become stronger. In this way, who can be more popular than the one surnamed Luo? Oh yes. The problem is, look at his thin arms and legs. How much volume can he have if he cuts off his entire thigh? Xia City, no, the people of the inner world will all want to get close to you. When the time comes, will they even give you a strand of leg hair? At this time, if Tianxi still couldn't understand Cat Eye's meaning, then her 10 years of schooling would have been wasted. She followed up on Cat Eye's words. What should I do? Risk. Even under the dark eyeshadow, Cat Eyes still emitted a sharp light that streaked across the tip of Tianxi's heart. Taking a huge risk to do something that even we ability users can't do. Tianxi really didn't understand. At this time, Gao Ming continued to describe the feeling after using the talisman paper. The internal molding is basically complete, and there is no interference. However, interference power isn't enough. We still need to cooperate to complete it. Someone come help out. I'll do it. I'll do it. Papercut had already burned the talisman paper, forming a paper circle and pasting it together. Right now, he just needed to send his telepathic thoughts into it and jump into the abyss. He went with Gao Meng to forge a brand new function for the fort. But soon Gao Meng shouted. 2 people aren't enough. Cat Eyes, you go. Luo Nan's situation was special. Adding him would cause a deviation, so he immediately called out. Who else is up there? Call them over. Follow Papercut's procedure. Once you get to the fort, just listen to Gao Ming's directions. Cat Eyes made an okay gesture and immediately contacted the personnel in charge of security. She gave clear instructions and walked forward. Her telepathic thoughts chased after Gao Ming and Papercut. Tianxi became a superfluous person in an instant. She didn't know what she should do. Especially half a minute later, a few ability users walked in with large strides. Everyone had their own duties. They were busy but not messy, making Tianxi look like a steak. There's probably no place for non-specialists in his field. Tianxi's mind was a jumble of thoughts. She was at a complete loss. A figure walked in front of her at this time. Senior Sister Tian. Senior Luo. Junior Luo. Tianxi didn't know how to address him, but it looked like Luo Nan didn't care too much. The smile on his face was the same as always. He wasn't that close, but he was very polite. Senior Sister, sorry to trouble you to make another trip. No, it's nothing. Tianxi didn't know why, but her heart tightened as she watched Luo Nan approach. Her many years of experience and quick-wittedness were useless. She subconsciously asked, Junior, what are you guys doing? Luo Nan didn't mind. He answered her question. I want to add a cheat to the Ring of Bloodwill. I want to put the results of my recent studies into practice. The Ring of Bloodwill? Tianxi obviously didn't understand. She could only do her best to reveal a smile. It sounds like a marvelous technique. Oh, it's quite simple. Luo Nan wouldn't say much to a layman like Tianxi. He was just about to change the topic when Cat Eyes just so happened to exit the fortress from behind. She stretched her back. You were the one who came up with this idea. Is there a problem? Luo Nan was very baffled. I haven't found anything yet, but there are enough people over there. I don't want to do experiments in a rigid manner, so I left. Luo Nan couldn't pay attention to Tianxi for now. He turned his head to glance at Gao Meng and the others, who were in the middle of deep experiments. He counted the number of people and made a preliminary estimate. Then he opened up the virtual work area and made a record. 5 people forming the basic functional module. There should be room for optimization. Tianxi couldn't hold back her curiosity. She focused her gaze and saw that aside from the scribbled words and numbers in the work area, there were groups of simple and complex geometrical figures. From the perspective of a professional designer, these figures undoubtedly possessed the meaning of a real structure. Though she was completely unable to understand them, Cat Eyes really didn't have the slightest interest in these things. She yawned half-truthfully. Isn't the Ring of Bloodwill pretty good? You're going to toss and turn like this. Don't do something superfluous in the end. Everything depends on the results. Luo Nan didn't have absolute confidence, but he didn't hesitate in the slightest. He had gotten used to expressing his thoughts to Rui Wen during this time. Even though he had switched to Cat Eyes and there was still the layman Tianxi by his side, he still couldn't stop himself. He sort of sorted out his thoughts and vented. The Ring of Bloodwill can be simple, but the fortress formed from it should have a more complex structure. Actually, if there were a few more clear-headed people over there, then there would be a more detailed division of labor in the design. It would inevitably jump out of a pure defensive mode and form the effect of attack and defense as one. In the end, whether it's the Ring of Bloodwill or the fortress, they should both belong to the basic framework. It is like a development platform. According to its rules and regulations, it should form a large amount of research and development results. It should form a system and a scale of existence. Oh, what I mean is that it is like a high-rise building. There should be all sorts of supporting facilities within the building to realize different functions. Luo Nan made the last analogy out of consideration after seeing that Tianxi was completely stupefied. Tianxi's cheeks flushed a bit, and her gaze drifted. She really didn't understand the contents of Luo Nan and Cat Eye's discussion. But when she truly touched upon this mysterious and unfamiliar domain, even if it was just an insignificant corner, the trembling that came from the bottom of her heart spread throughout her entire body like an electric shock. It was like a spring dream awakened in the middle of the night. It formed a feeling of unbridled satisfaction. But emptiness and absent-mindedness were unavoidable after this satisfaction. Luo Nan didn't ponder over Tianxi's feelings. He just spoke apologetically. Senior, I'm sorry. I haven't regained my senses yet. You came this time. Tianxi shook her head, using this opportunity to sort out her feelings. It's nothing. It sounds quite fresh. Yeah, Junior, I came today to run errands for my teacher. Tianxi finally recovered a bit of the feeling of a senior when talking about matters of the normal world. Her body language relaxed quite a bit. Some time ago, I took the liberty to tell Professor Pan about your matters. She really does miss you, but she hasn't seen you come over. Plus, there are all sorts of design projects at the end of the year. She doesn't have the time to spare. It's not easy for her to have some free time, so she wants to invite you to her house. Professor Pan is inviting me to her house? Luo Nan was a bit surprised, but he quickly reacted. It's my fault. I've troubled her with my matters. Luo Nan hesitated a bit when he spoke to this point. His eyelids drooped, and he was a bit embarrassed. Senior, you should be able to understand. I've offended a lot of people in the inner world recently, and some of them are very tasteless. I'm worried that I'll get too close to Professor Pan and I'll implicate her. Tianxi went. Oh, that's it. The nightmare of Ocean Sky Cloud City flashed uncontrollably in her mind at this very moment. Her face turned a bit pale. Luo Nan saw Tianxi's reaction, and his previous judgment grew firmer. It's absolutely true. But I can't tell Professor Pan about these things. Senior, come over. We can talk about it. We can think of an excuse, a message, so that Professor Pan won't be angry. That's it? But Professor Pan is a very smart and very sharp person. It's not easy to hide things from her. Tianxi was unable to think of a way for a while, and her thoughts were a bit scattered. She couldn't help but ask, Junior Nan, are you in a very dangerous situation right now? Is there anyone who dares to go against Professor Luo? Cat Eyes always loved to go against Luo Nan, and it was the same right now. Luo Nan glared at her, and turned to face Tianxi. Of course it's much better than before. I also have time to do some research. But Luo Nan saw the change in Tianxi's expression at this point, and he shook his head to himself. He took the opportunity to give her a reminder. Senior, Cat Eyes can really torment people sometimes. I've been bossing her around lately, and she always wants to find a scapegoat. So you can trust her words, but you can't completely trust her. Don't let her lead you by the nose. Cat Eyes raised an eyebrow, but she just sneered. Tianxi felt a jolt on her back. Only now did she realize that her conversation with Cat Eyes had been overheard by Luo Nan. This made her a bit embarrassed. But when she thought about it from the bottom of her heart, she relaxed. She lowered her head, but the corner of her lips perked up. She sighed in self-mockery. If my heart doesn't have a direction, how could I be led by someone? Chapter 6:23. You really know how to make trouble for me. Luo Nan glared at Cat Eyes in a bad mood after Tianxi left the underground laboratory. You should be able to tell that senior sister Tian doesn't have any talent in this area. In order to pacify Tianxi's mood, Luo Nan deliberately sent her to the boundary of the 5th level before walking back. Cat Eyes followed him the entire time, paying no attention to the troublesome situation Tianxi had created. Yeah, I know. But I thought you were in urgent need of experimental materials. Luo Nan stopped at the corner of the stairwell. He felt that there was a lack of communication between him and Cat Eyes. Didn't you say that you wanted to readjust your sensing mode? That you wanted to do some filtering based on the configuration? Even though I don't really understand, I can clearly see the look in your eyes. Cat Eyes gestured with 2 fingers and jabbed at him. Luo Nan tilted his head back to avoid being blinded by Cat Eyes' sharp fingernails. You must be drunk. Hee. Don't say that you didn't want me to be your experimental subject. You're baffling. Cat Eyes raised an eyebrow. You look at everything around you, including inanimate objects and living objects. You want to substitute them into configurations, deconstruct and optimize them, right? Oh my, Luo Nan blinked. He swallowed back the words roundworm in your stomach, and so on. However, his expression revealed his true intentions. Do you really think everyone is blind? Cat Eyes sneered and crooked her finger at him. Let me borrow the work area. What? The work area of your drawing software. Luo Nan didn't understand what Cat Eyes meant, but he did as she said and opened up the interface of the work area. Since he had been conducting a simulation calculation of the external configuration of the blood intent ring not too long ago, the interface stopped at that moment. Cat Eyes didn't want to see this. She bluntly operated in Luonan's stead, saving and exiting. She flipped back to the starting interface of the previous level. Right now, a simple logo appeared before the eyes of the two. It could be considered a simple drawing of the structure of the blood intent ring, but it was separated out to highlight the wedge-shaped section inside. There was also a line of words below. The content was very simple. It was written by Luonan. Without a configuration, there was no way to stand. Cat Eyes chuckled. What a famous saying. Look at this sentence. You want to use configuration to explain everything, deconstruction and reconstruction, right? Luonan coughed. This was the inspiration he obtained from ancient texts. The original words were, if you don't learn poetry, you won't be able to speak. If you don't learn etiquette, you won't be able to stand. This was what Confucius taught his son. He had specially created this interface as a form of motivation for himself. Cat Eyes was quite thoughtful, but her imagination was a bit too big. Don't look at me like that. I'm flustered. Cat Eyes waved her hand. Do you know how much trash we've cleared for you over the past 2 days? Trash. Those tables, chairs, cupboards, and so on that you asked for. Now the 5th floor is almost full. Do you want to go and admire the current state of the experimental subjects? It's pure corruption. Luonan tried to explain. I want to understand the spatial concept of configuration through these simple pieces of furniture. After all, the configuration is intuitive, and the space we're in is too empty. If we want to switch, we need to start from the basics. Cat Eyes raised her hands in surrender. Please spare me. It's fine if you go crazy by yourself. Don't drag me into this. You're the one who's going crazy. Luonan cursed silently, but it looked like Cat Eye's temper was greater than his. I just want to say that if you want to be a Frankenstein, you can just say it. Let everyone be prepared. Others treat you as a savior, but the ark you've sat on is actually a man-devouring demon's lair. Luonan frowned. What are you talking about? Cat Eyes stared at him. The Blood Intent Ring and the Abyss Region Fortress are your experimental grounds, right? It's a good idea to test your inspiration, but there are practically all the elite ability users of Xia City there. Don't overdo it and capsize the ship. You'll be a sinner for all eternity. Luonan didn't get angry. Instead, he spoke with an extremely certain attitude. The plan I'm bringing out is certainly the most mature plan. In fact, the maturity and firmness of the fortress surpass your imagination. A few cheats, whether they succeed or not, will absolutely not shake the foundation. I'm not talking about that. Then what are you talking about? Even though you haven't been playing with that old hoodlum ghost eye for the past 2 days, do you dare to say that your previous practice was purely for the sake of improving and increasing? Even though there was no one else in the stairwell, Cat Eyes still lowered her voice. I don't know about others, but I'm a cat trapped in your cage. I'm choked to the point of nausea from your killing intent. She reached out to press down on Luonan's shoulder as she spoke to this point. She moved closer to his ear and said, You're definitely thinking of doing something dangerous, right, Mr. Captain? Are you playing in a play? Luonan retorted in a bad mood. He knew that there were some things that he could not hide from Cat Eyes, who was in the same closed system. He didn't bother hiding it either. I have my own considerations. Of course. Of course. It's the same for everyone. But can you not be too impatient? I'm impatient? I'm starting from the basic configuration bit by bit. Of course it's fine if you keep doing this. You see, I'm helping you find experimental materials, right? But the problem is, don't do things the way you did on the night of the 14th again, okay? Luonan's words struck him back to the night of the lecture half a month ago. He really did not understand Cat Eyes' meaning. What happened to me on the 14th? Did the lecture bother you? Hee, I hope you're just purely lecturing. Luonan's brows locked tightly as he locked gazes with Cat Eyes. A moment later, his gaze converged and his cheeks drooped slightly. I understand. Yes. While he was lecturing, he had adventured over the Pacific Ocean. He had engaged in a remote contest with 2 extraordinaries. He was indeed under the suspicion of being irresponsible. He had nearly capsized that time. He had implicated over 1,000 ability users of Xia City, who had already mentally traversed to the space fortress. Cat Eyes brought up this matter again after half a month had passed. Was it because she felt that he had been too impatient during this period of time? Luonen didn't say anything more. It was good to understand some things tacitly. With the matter of Gong Qi pressing down on his heart, it was hard to avoid being impatient in his actions. He originally wanted to resolve this problem in the near future. He never thought that he would discover an even deeper mystery after taking Rue when on a trip to the cloud world. In a certain sense, this was a harvest. A great harvest. But if he didn't handle it well, he would undoubtedly dig a hole for himself. Luonen walked back with his head lowered. The layers upon layers of stairs beneath his feet were monotonous and unchanged. But in the end, there was a limit and an end. But if he wanted to dig out the deeper mysteries of the cloud world, it was an enormous project that couldn't be measured. In the face of this enormous workload, killing Gong Qi was like a small problem that wasn't worth mentioning. It was like traversing 100,000 mountains just to pluck a single fruit. That fruit had clearly been within reach not too long ago. This intense contrast really tormented Luonen quite a bit. Right now, he would silently recite the word patience several dozen times every morning. Only then would he be able to concentrate his energy and throw himself into the research work of basic configurations. Why did he create his own famous aphorism? This sort of hipster behavior forcefully encouraged himself from the ruins of his anxious and frustrated mental state. Cat Eyes' low voice continued to transmit over. There are some things that can't be done in a short amount of time. It's not bad to put them aside for now. Luonen let out a ha. He didn't respond. Cat Eyes continued to speak. Though I don't want to mention it, you are indeed in the position of leader right now. It doesn't matter if they are attracted to you or if they are imprisoned. Many people are acting according to your train of thought and thoughts. You are anxious, and many people can't help but be anxious as well. Can't you see that Rue Wen's state hasn't been good these past 2 days? Oh, I know. Luonen had no choice but to speak. Not only did he know that Rue Wen's state was terrible, he also knew the most fundamental reason for this situation. Right now, Luonen was referring to the deep layers of the cloud world's configuration fragments. He was studying and understanding the basics of configuration with all his might, using this to correct his own sensing mode. The reason why he did this was to use his most outstanding ability to comb through the structure and foundation of the cloud world. He could penetrate the barriers of space and time, and grasp the deeper mysteries of the cloud world. From Luonen's perspective, the deep layers of the cloud world's configuration fragments were indeed treasures that he could use as reference. However, his perception was limited, his movements were limited, and he even needed Rue Wen's support to enter and exit. Just the area of black fog that he and Rue Wen were in before was nothing more than a corner of the multi-layered structure of space and time. According to Rue Wen's explanation, the changes in the rules and laws of space were extremely large when one went deeper. It wasn't jumping from Asia to Africa, nor was it jumping from Earth to Mars. It was true space-time travel, jumping from one space-time to another space-time. The most appropriate comparison was to jump from local space-time to the cloud world. Wasn't it easy? But if the factor of gear was excluded, then think about Gong Qi's current fate. Rue Wen achieved the effect of becoming one with the environment through the chaotic resonance of the multi-layered structure of space and time. She finally penetrated the barriers and realized the jump. The problem was that the deep layers of the cloud world's space-time fragments were constantly changing. Sometimes, the timing wasn't coincidental. She could only find an optimal solution with multiple compromises, and then use her own tyrannical explosive strength to penetrate through in one spurt of energy. Luonen would never be able to learn this move no matter what. He wouldn't even be able to find an opportunity to rely on his own strength to go back and forth in a short amount of time, unless he was able to forcefully interfere with the entire structure of the cloud world with overwhelming strength. That would practically be on the level of the creator. It was completely unrealistic. From this angle, even if Rue Wen had taken a shortcut, how easy could it be? Every time Rue Wen entered and exited the cloud world, she did her utmost. Sometimes, she would even respond to Luonen's request to explore deeper regions. Therefore, There were a few times when she was so tired that she nearly collapsed. Luonan obviously knew about these problems, but he really couldn't do without Rue Wen's support. Damn, he was back to square one. Luonan closed his eyes. He pressed down on his forehead, which was already beginning to heat up. He didn't speak for a long time. Torment himself. Torment others. Chapter 624. December 28th, Friday. It was finally the last weekend of the Gregorian calendar. The Chinese and Western festivals were almost over, and there was still more than a month before the traditional Spring Festival. The students and office workers in Xia City could only hope to hang on to New Year's Day. There were still 3 or 4 days before New Year's Day, but the businesses in the large residential area were still practicing under the lingering warmth of Christmas. Low-end recharges, high-end discounts, and fancy renovations. They had to dig out the last bucket of gold for the year 2096 before the end of the year. As the core area of the large residential area, Cloud City Water Village's high-rise buildings had undoubtedly become the center of activity for the surrounding students and residents. Whenever it was around dinner time, a stream of people could pass through the Water Village's underground parking lot all the way to Aurora Cloud Capital's rooftop observation deck. The taverns and restaurants that were usually lukewarm were also forced to come up with reservation clauses to deal with the huge number of tourists who could not be seen at all. Compared to these, the tea houses, cafes, and cold drink shops scattered around the various buildings as temporary stops for tourists were really hard to find. The group of cadres in the Mystic Arts Research Society found a bar with great difficulty and settled down for the time being. More than 10 people occupied 2 tables, and it was quite crowded. A sharp-eyed person saw that there was a table in the corner of the bar, and only one of the 4 seats was occupied. He said, "There's an empty seat over there. A few of you can go over there." Over there. Hey, that person looks quite familiar. Nonsense, there are at least 10,000 faces in the large residential area. No, look, that person seems to be from our society. Isn't that perfect? We can get together. If he can happily give up his seat, we'll give him an extra 0. 1 credit. As he said this, someone got up and prepared to share a table, but as soon as his butt left his seat, he was pulled back by his companion. "Are you stupid?" His companion pouted slightly, indicating that the idiot could see the expressions of some people on the other table. The other table was relatively spacious, and those sitting there were high-ranking cadres, vice presidents, investors, and so on. Among them, it was obvious that Okay's baby face was dark, and his gaze was like a knife when he turned his head and glanced at the corner. Sitting diagonally across from him, Fei Jin was holding her chin and smiling subtly. Got it. Thinking of the recent news in the club, many people took a second look and suddenly realized, oh my, it's the legendary one. Why is Luonan here? There were some high-ranking members of the society who wished for the whole world to be in chaos. They directly asked the question. Okay's face turned even darker. Fei Jin was still smiling, but no one really broke the ice. Others might not know, but all of the high-ranking officials on the platform knew the origin of the devil ray in the lake in front of Gear on the North Shore. From beginning to end, no one had ever heard Luonan mention this matter. But when the mutant, which was worth 50 to 60 million, was stuffed into the lake as an ornamental fish, this already made clear the hard path and position of that person. Every single one of the society members present had a net worth of hundreds of millions. 50 to 60 million was not a large sum that was worth looking up to. But the reality was right in front of him. He had no ambition for the power of the society at all. He just wanted a laboratory for fun. Who would purposely poke at this guy when they had nothing to do? And so, after a short period of awkwardness, no one brought up the stupid topic of sharing a seat again. They just pretended not to see the person in the corner. The group of people began to order refreshments and drinks. They chatted to pass the time as they waited for the group activity that would soon begin. When they first entered the bar, Fei Jin, well, it should be said that she was possessed. She had already discovered Luonan's existence. In addition to the convenience of being a woman, her current position was the best position to observe Luonan. She could see Luo Nan in the corner just by raising her eyes, including most of his movements. And it was through Fei Jin's eyes that Lady Halder was able to size up the target she had been pondering for a long time. Lady Halder had adapted to the tool that was Fei Jin these past few days. She was familiar with the structure of Fei Jin's body and soul. She had a general understanding of Fei Jin's social connections. And Luo Nan had been cooped up in the laboratory all this time. It was really a coincidence that they ran into each other today. Coincidence brought opportunity. Lady Halder observed the target in the corner, while chatting with a familiar face next to her. She dealt with Yuru. The reason why she was able to do this was because there were 2 or more souls placed within Fei Jin's body. Let's put it this way for now. The blood flame order's seizing secret technique wasn't a direct method of possession. Instead, it was like taming a horse or herding a sheep. It used fear as a rein and despair as a fence to direct the behavior of the original soul, causing it to enter a wonderful half-drunk, half-awake state. It used the instincts deeply rooted within the body to deal with the majority of daily situations. When a special situation or a problem occurred, it would be forcefully corrected. This method seemed gentle, but in fact it burned vital energy to a great extent. It was extremely ruthless, and it would cause unavoidable harm to the host. Lady Halder didn't take it seriously. In any case, many-sided wouldn't let this person live after this. Right now, most of Lady Halder's effective attention was focused on Luo Nan's body. From her point of view, including Yin Le, who temporarily shared this body, Luo Nan's behavior was very strange. Yin Le heard the news and joined in at the last minute. She observed for a while, but she couldn't understand Luo Nan at all. Why is he being so picky? The virtual workspace opened up on the table in front of Luo Nan. There were many virtual structures that appeared to be parts, fragments, and even lines and strokes. They were densely packed, with many layers interweaving and even twisting together. Luo Nan was like taking out a ball of thread or picking out a toothpick. He meticulously disassembled them, but sometimes he even added a few strokes. The operation appeared to be quite complex. He should be doing some sort of classification work. Lady Halder carefully observed Luo Nan's operation in the virtual workspace, especially the last few steps of the multi-step cycle. It seems that the majority of those fragmented structures are meaningful, at least on the level of ability users. Meaningful? Is it referring to the effect of the interference force flow? This should be the configuration he spoke of and demonstrated. Lady Halder recalled the video materials circulating on the internet. She made a comparison and made a preliminary conclusion. The problem is that the details of the structure seem to have little to do with the Blood Soul Temple. It could also be that the disassembly is too fragmented. After all, there aren't many people who can stand at his height to understand the domain of configuration. I actually believe that rumor. Rumor? Order of Justice, Door of Truth, and the like. That nonsense from RE. What else? Could it be that these fragmented components are all a part of his inspiration? Lady Halder believed that there were geniuses in the world, but she had always made a clear distinction between accumulation and talent. Of course, this wasn't the main point. From their point of view, if Luo Nan's attainments in configuration weren't related to the Blood Soul Temple, then it would truly be troublesome. Why did the Blood Flame Order's First Ablatum and Vice Ablatum attempt to connect with Luo Nan? It was because the white bone mound that appeared in the Jintong Sea of Death was undoubtedly the configuration of the Blood Soul Temple. So they suspected that Luo Nan had a close relationship with Mo Luan, who should have died but didn't. On the other side, Luo Nan proposed a series of theoretical prototypes such as cage, configuration, and so on. He even developed the blood will ring on this foundation. He built a fortress and successfully established himself in the Abyss district. This method, which was highly similar to the fundamental methods of a secret order, allowed them to see the hope of the Blood Soul Temple's structure taking a step further. At this very moment, in a certain corner of the world, the structure of the Blood Soul Temple had already materialized. But the problem was that it wasn't under their control. So whether it was in theory or in practice, they needed a clear fulcrum. They needed to firmly exert their strength, so that they wouldn't be left far behind. They would be at a loss of what to do and where to go. Probing, questioning, and seeking support all fell upon Luo Nan's body at the same time. These two goals actually had inherent contradictions. Lady Halder didn't dare to say that she had a foolproof plan. She could only seek further contact with Luo Nan in order to carry out her plan. Fei Jin observed from a distance. The first ablatum and vice ablatum were pondering. With Luo Nan's identity and current situation, he shouldn't be posing in such a crowded place. There should be something he needs to do. Yes, there really is. Fei Jin's eyes swiveled, and her gaze swept over a familiar face that had just entered the door. The person behind her made a special effort to memorize this face. Tianxi. It was a rare normal person who had a close relationship with Luo Nan. She was once a high-ranking member of the Mutual Aid Association. Right now, Tianxi was following closely beside an old woman, blindly following her every step. The old woman was around 80 or 90 years old. Her grizzled hair was cut short and stood up like a boy. It was dazzling, but it appeared refreshing. Her figure was on the thin side, but her complexion was rosy. Her clothes were dignified and conservative, and her posture was ramrod straight. She appeared to have quite the bearing and self-cultivation. A group of people naturally saw the old woman when they passed by the two tables of the Shenyan Society. A few people subconsciously shrank their heads back, but even more people stuck out their butts and stood up to show the most basic respect. Professor Pan. The old woman shot a glance over, but she didn't stop. She just nodded in greeting. Under the complicated gazes of a group of people, she headed straight for the corner of the bar, which was Luo Nan's seat. As for Luo Nan, he was clearly excessively engrossed in the configuration fragments of the virtual work area. He only suddenly woke up when the two people arrived at the table. He didn't even bother to tidy up when he saw the newcomers. He hastily stood up. He was just about to greet them when the old woman across from him opened her mouth to ask, "You're Luo Nan?" Her words were clear and full of energy when she opened her mouth. Her voice was a bit louder than a normal person's. She didn't wait for Luo Nan to respond before speaking with furrowed brows. "You're just like your father. You've been infected with the bad habit of mysticism." Luo Nan was a bit stupefied. He subconsciously said, "Can you not mention him?" The corner of the old woman's mouth curled up. "I don't want to pay attention to that guy either." Luo Nan was fully aware that the atmosphere wasn't quite normal, but he couldn't help but have a good impression of the old woman. Tianxi gave him a meaningful glance at this time, and he remembered to greet her. "Professor Pan, senior sister Tian, please sit." This grizzled-haired old woman was the mentor of Luo Nan's mother, Bo Qingwen. She was the town boss of the school's design department, Professor Pan 1. Chapter 625. After sitting back down, Luo Nan first closed the virtual work area. Then he followed the process he had envisioned before. He picked up the menu, wanting to ask Professor Pan what he wanted to order. The problem was that the light in his work area had just turned off when old Mrs. Pan, who was sitting across from him, projected her own work area through her wristband. Inside was a set of information forms. Old Mrs. Pan had a dull expression. She tapped on the work area and enlarged the form. "Let me give you a report. I'm quite curious as to what kind of young man would be so indecisive in the face of an old lady's invitation. So I used my authority as a teacher to access your real-time database file and investigate your background." The final exams haven't started yet, so the statistics of your academic results are flawed. But from the aspects of attendance, in-class tests, performance tracking, and homework completion, you've been growing more and more restless lately. You've been missing quite a few classes, but the procedures are impeccable. You've always been able to pass through dangerous situations. It's filled with the stench of manual labor. Do you know someone with power? You're still using this sort of self-deceiving method in school. You might as well just take a leave of absence. Luo Nan and Tianxi looked at each other. Tianxi had no idea that her teacher had such a trick up her sleeve. She was in a bit of a predicament for a time. As for Luo Nan, he felt a bit dizzy from being smacked in the head like a brick. It was as if he had been kicked back to his teacher's home visit. Only then did he understand what kind of personality Tianxi had described as smart and sharp. Speaking of which, old Mrs. Pan had spoken a bit too deeply with a shallow acquaintance, but Luo Nan couldn't get angry. After all, she was an old lady. She was an elder. She cared about you. He could only rack his brains to think of a way to respond. And at this time, old Mrs. Pan's sharp and strangely clear eyes stared over. So I have to mention that you and your old man are carved from the same mold. You don't come to school to study, to enrich yourself, and to perfect yourself. You don't do proper things. You go and do irrelevant things. You stir up trouble that you shouldn't get involved in. You also stir up the hearts of innocent girls and so on. Professor Panwin spoke without thinking, but Tianxi felt quite awkward listening to him. She braced herself and gave the old lady a bit of a reprieve. As for Luo Nan, his head and face were truly covered in dirt. The situation before his eyes was completely different from what he had expected. He practically didn't even have the chance to open his mouth to speak. It wasn't until Tianxi gave him another hint that he came to his senses. He didn't care about what other drinks he ordered and poured a cup of tea for the old lady as a sign of respect. This was supposed to be an entry point, but the problem was that the draft he had painstakingly memorized was now useless. He had no idea what to say next. Luo Nan gaped, but all he did was force out was sweat. Tianxi was worried for him. Just as Luo Nan was about to soothe his cheeks, old Mrs. Pan spun her teacup and raised her chin at Luo Nan. She pointed at the location of the work area. "What are you doing?" Luo Nan let out a long sigh of relief. No matter what, he could finally start a normal conversation. He hurriedly replied, "I'm doing some categorization work." He wanted to open up the work area once more and let the old lady look over it, but the old lady shook her head and refused. "There's no need to show me. I'm different from your father. I'm not interested in things that aren't in my field of expertise." Luo Nan was a bit startled, but he finally found an opportunity to cut to the chase. He didn't have the time to think too much and just said, "Professor Pan, my father was annoying back then. Let's not talk about him, okay? Actually, I've always wanted to know what my mother was like back in school. Can you tell me about it?" Professor Panwin's expression was calm. He just used his fingers to pinch the handle of his teacup. He had no intention of starting a conversation. Luo Nan could only brace himself and continue. "You might not know this, but I've always lived with my aunt and uncle. I don't understand the situation back then at all. No one told me." Luo Nan saw that he couldn't continue, so he could only cast his pleading eyes toward Tianxi. But then old Mrs. Pan's resonant voice entered his ears. Qingwen was probably like this when she was in school. She did what she needed to do and dealt with the problems she was best at. "Old Mrs. Pan, why are you mocking me?" Luo Nan simply wanted to slap the table to death. Tianxi opened her mouth to speak, but she was stopped by old Mrs. Pan's stern gaze. Old Mrs. Pan didn't say anything after that. She just watched Luo Nan's expression. Just as the young man was embarrassed and reserved to the extreme, her fingers left the handle of her teacup, and she slowly stood up. "Since you're so nervous yourself, then this old woman won't be an eyesore here. I have a family banquet today, and it just so happens that it's upstairs. I'll head over directly." This was it. Luo Nan stood up, bewildered. He didn't know whether he should urge her to stay, or let out a sigh of relief. Tianxi didn't dare to say anything. She could only give Luo Nan a comforting gaze, and extend her hand to help the old woman out of her seat. But her actions were reprimanded in the blink of an eye. "I can't recognize the road anymore. Can't I walk?" This was the first time Tianxi encountered such a situation, ever since she came into contact with Professor Panwin. She was scared stiff on the spot. The two youngsters watched as the old woman moved out of her seat and walked out. They wanted to speak, but they didn't have the courage to do so. Luo Nan could only give Tianxi a meaningful glance, indicating that she should follow behind to avoid a situation. Tianxi took a deep breath and calmed herself down a bit. She nodded in understanding. Just as they were exchanging meaningful glances, the old woman in front of them suddenly stood still. She half turned around and said, "Luo Nan. Right? Ha. Yes, Professor Pan." Luo Nan subconsciously straightened his body. Old Mrs. Pan's expression didn't change. She just looked Luo Nan up and down a few times before speaking. I can only say that your appearance isn't ugly. I heard that your family's conditions aren't that extravagant, and your glib tongue isn't that nimble. Presumably, you don't rely on your face, money, or flowery words to live. Of course, you don't have the temperament of a leader. You have no way of making others bow down to you. Luo Nan was stupefied. He didn't know whether or not he should accept these evaluations. Old Mrs. Pan continued to speak. But even so, you still have Tianci and a few people to help you. You can even change the school's database. It's impossible to do this just by relying on a person. I think that at the very least, you should be relying on your own ability to make a living. If that's the case, then you're similar to Qingwen. That's good. The old woman suddenly smiled. The wrinkles at the corner of her eyes bloomed, but it was gentle, calm, and peaceful. Then she turned around once more. Her steps were gentle, and she walked against the flow of people as she left, step by step. However, the last 3 words lingered between her lips and teeth, echoing in Luo Nan's ears. Chapter 626. The people of the Mystic Research Society were certainly unable to hear the conversation between the old lady and the young man in the corner. However, the odd atmosphere was enough for some people to see some clues. There were professional enthusiasts like OK among the high-level cadres of the Mystic Arts Research Society. There were also gossip lords who were extremely interested in private relationships. What's going on between Old Lady Pan and this Luo guy? Even if a 10th grade kid used his connections, he wouldn't be able to get into the School of Design. Where the hell did you guys do your homework when you were bidding? The designer of North Bank Gear is this bro's mother. Looking at the time, he was probably Old Lady Pan's disciple back in the day. Oh, I remember now. A few days ago, Xie Junping chattered on endlessly. I got tired of listening to him, so I automatically blocked it. With this gossip lord mentioning it, it was hard for the 2 platforms to deliberately ignore Luo Nan's existence. The direction of the discussion naturally changed. Luo Nan's name was like a thunderclap piercing the ears of this group of cadres of the Mystic Research Society during this period of time. Sealing off the 3rd underground floor, directly confronting Vice President OK, raising a devil ray. These methods simply made it clear that Luo Nan was a big shot. This was a big shot that had appeared out of nowhere. Random people should get out of the way. But this kid clearly didn't even make it to the last bus to join the society. It seemed like his family background wasn't particularly outstanding. Was this gorgeous turn of events meant to harm the eyes of the people of the Mystic Research Society? Such an abrupt turn of events naturally created enough topics of discussion. If one were to dig deeper, there would be enough gossip waiting to be discovered or created. After pondering a few times, someone really did dig out a bit of information. Speaking of which, I've heard this name before. You guys probably won't be able to guess who brought it up. The suspenseful technique was clumsy enough, but the timing was good. Others would pinch their noses and support him. The suspenseful person didn't let the gossip lord enjoy the limelight amidst a bunch of jeers. He successfully attracted a wave of attention. Only then did he reveal the answer. It's our great president. President? Tangy? I just remembered it. That was at the end of September, right? The club's shares hadn't changed yet, so I was in charge of the entrance test for new members. At that time, senior sister Tang was pretty much out of the picture, and was only a vice president in name. But that day, she specifically came over to greet me, saying that she would take care of Luo Nan during the interview. In the end, Luo Nan didn't come at all. That's why I have such an impression. Hey, what's their relationship? Keeping him in suspense, he said. He said he's my friend's younger brother. Friend? Mana no girlfriend? In any case, there was one point that could be emphasized after a round of discussion. This fellow Luo Nan had help both inside and outside. Though his background was fuzzy, it could be seen from his performance that he was solid even within the Mystic Arts Research Society, where the 2nd generation gathered. Therefore, if he could avoid provoking them, he would. Professor Pan Wen left her seat at this time. She refused to support her, but Luo Nan and Tianci still wanted to see her off. The three walked past one after another. The two tables also shut their mouths. Those who had stood up with their buttocks in the air just now had to do it again, regardless of whether the old lady agreed or not. The two tables of the Mystic Research Society finally let out a sigh of relief when the three of them left the water. The topic of conversation became even more open. There were even people who began to feel injustice for OK. It's because of old Xia's nagging and some people's messy help that a lot of things weren't done smoothly during the theme week. Later on, it's like an aquarium. OK didn't appreciate these remarks at all. His face turned even greener. 8 Trigram Lord had a good relationship with O Quebec. He sat next to OK, so he patted OK's arm and comforted him. Don't lower yourself to the level of this idiot. I heard that this bro's mother died early. He lacked love since he was young, so he drew a circle to occupy it like a family dog. He probably thinks that place is his mother's embrace and he's secretly crying. These words amused quite a few people. Actually, 8 Trigram Lord was a bit afraid of Luonan, but he liked to take advantage of people with his glib tongue. He saw Luonan leave the room, and he laughed and added, "What do you guys think? From that bro's point of view, if someone were to go in and out of those floors, wouldn't it be the same as? Oh my God!" A cup of half-hot coffee was directly splashed onto 8 Trigram Lord's face. His eyes, nose, and mouth weren't spared. There was also his collar and front lapel. It was truly hot, painful, and embarrassing. At this moment, not to mention the two nearby tables, even the surrounding area was stunned by the sudden change in the situation. The water bar actually went silent for half a second. "Fei Jin, are you F***king sick?" 8 Trigram Lord suddenly jumped 3 feet into the air. There was still coffee dripping down from his eyelashes. He had to wipe his hands, but his hands were spread apart. He looked like a duck that had been doused in boiling water. As for Fei Jin, the instigator of all this, she slowly put down her murder weapon. She had an elegant demeanor and responded with a faint smile. "I saved your life. No need to thank me." 8 Trigram Lord's mind exploded. King. Old chow, old chow. Go wash up first. Only then did someone come to their senses. They hurriedly stood up to stop the fight. No matter who was right or wrong, they had to first persuade them to leave. This was to avoid making an even bigger joke in public. 8 Trigram Lord's brain was basically muddled right now, but he was still subconsciously afraid of Fei Jin. He was pulled away by the people around him, and he subconsciously stepped down from the slope. He walked out of his seat while cursing and waving away the support of others. He also tried his best to block out the strange gazes of the people around him as he walked to the bathroom. But before he could take 2 steps, someone passed by in front of him, blocking his path. He raised his head and saw Luonan's young and inexperienced face. "He's back." 8 Trigram Lord and Luonan looked face to face. He shivered in the next second, and instinctively averted his gaze. It was also at this moment that cold air clearly grew in his cranial cavity. Even his brain juice was about to freeze. "He wants to kill me." An inexplicable thought popped out and pounded on his heart. Actually, Luonan didn't move at all. He just crossed paths with 8 Trigram Lord. 8 Trigram Lord's mind was in a mess. He simply didn't notice the multifunctional robot in front of him that was delivering refreshments. He just bumped into it and flipped the tray over. He even had to drink the boiling hot coffee. He screamed miserably and lost his balance. His face fell to the ground, bringing about another wave of chaos. 8 Trigram Lord's miserable state was right in front of them, but the two tables of the Mystical Research Society weren't able to react in time. The reason was very simple. Luonan's gaze streaked across the two tables as he walked back. The cold air seemed to be able to completely freeze the hot drinks on the two tables. Of course, the people's reactions and courage were frozen as well. Only when Luonan and Tianxi sat back down did someone from the Mystical Research Society get up to check on 8 Trigram Lord's situation. They helped him clean up and treat him. The others looked at each other in dismay. A few high-ranking officers finally reacted. They lowered their voices to the lowest level. "That person seems to be from the circle? He's the government, the military, or a special person from the Starry Sky Club. MC. Oh, no wonder. Why don't we leave? It's too obvious. After all, the Mystic Arts Research Society was considered a professional hobbyist organization. Plus, they were situated in a high-ranking domain with social authority. They had some understanding and contact with some half-true and half-false channels and circles. They soon discovered the mistake in the topic of discussion just now. There was nothing wrong with people with simple backgrounds. There was nothing wrong with people with simple abilities. However, it was very hard to deal with people with both backgrounds and abilities. This was especially true for these freaks who possessed some sort of supersocial attribute. Maybe I should hire a bodyguard in a related field. Hee, a lackey who wears an exoskeleton armor every day? In the short term, it won't just be through the channels of the military. The problem is that we don't have any right now, okay? The group of high-ranking officers were undoubtedly in a difficult position. Only Fei Jean had a smile on her face from beginning to end. It was as if she hadn't been the one splashing that person's face just now. Many of her companions had no choice but to admire her information channels and decisiveness from such an enigmatic attitude. Some people tried to get some clues, but Fei Jean didn't refuse. She casually chatted awkwardly with this group of people. Her main focus was still on Luo Nan. She watched as Luo Nan and Tian Si sat back in the corner and conversed in low voices. She was thankful for Gossip Lord's stupidity. When Luo Nan's ice-cold gaze swept past earlier, it was only when he looked at her that his gaze softened. This was a good start. However, the controller behind Fei Jean didn't have any intentions of striking while the iron was hot. She paid close attention to the various details in the corner with interest. She combined it with the harvest from her previous observations and gradually came up with a basic train of thought. Inla. Boss. I remember that Multifaceted sent out an intelligence topic a few days ago. It's closely related to this person. They even invited an expert to conduct a psychological diagnosis. The name should be Persona. Inli's memory was trustworthy. Yes, a persona. Mrs. Halder smiled. That's just a half-finished product, and the fee is so expensive. However, it's worth it now. Bring me that intelligence report. If everything goes smoothly, we'll know how to communicate with this person. The first and deputy ablatums of the Bloodflame Order were in a temporary foothold in Xia City. It was very easy for them to search through the information. They soon found the intelligence report that was being paid for. This intelligence report was more or less a summary. It specifically extracted information on Luo Nan's social interactions and carried out a relevant psychological analysis. The problem was that no matter how authoritative an expert in psychology was, it would be hard for them to determine the nature of an ability user, especially a powerful character. After all, every ability user more or less possessed a supersocial attribute. Even in terms of pathology, the structure of the body and soul would undergo structural changes to a greater or lesser degree. On a medical level, it could even be diagnosed as an organic lesion. Of course, this was far from the main point. Luo Nan's situation might be even more complicated. It was said that this person had been undergoing body modifications through injecting nerve drugs starting from the age of 10. Any expert would be flabbergasted when faced with Luo Nan's greatly mutated nervous system structure. They would be speechless. They could only make assumptions based on the external performance of the target. They could only make a general analysis and judgment. The conclusions drawn from Luo Nan's situation were rather rough. They weren't even convincing. Chapter 627. Dissociative Identity Disorder. Multiple Personality Disorder? Ever since it appeared in the world, it had always been the subject of doubt. There were even quite a few experts and scholars who didn't believe that such a case truly existed in the world. Many times, similar diagnoses were unable to convince the masses. Inlu was one of those people who weren't convinced. It's still latent? The diagnosis is too vague. Mrs. Halder laughed involuntarily. If you think the conclusion is oily, then you don't need to care about it. Those experts can't do mental and pathological tests. All diagnoses are like scratching an itch through their boots. It's better for us to figure it out ourselves. I'm more interested in the logic behind multifaceted's name. Her intuition and judgment are sometimes more reliable than those so-called experts." As she spoke, Mrs. Halder opened the intelligence folder. There were statements, analyses, and even more valuable first-hand videos. The folder displayed all of Luo Nan's social interactions in public since his debut. What was especially valuable was the battle scene of Luo Nan making a name for himself in Ocean Sky Cloud City, with several people from headquarters. It came from the surrounding monitoring system. There was also a portion of it. It was the footage of a series of clashes before and after the incident at the municipal plaza. This was the information recorded by the Psychic Wave Network. It was of a very high secret level in the Xia City branch, but it had been retrieved by the all-powerful multifaceted Sun Jiai. In addition, there were recordings of semi-public and semi-private areas of Acumen College, Aurora Cloud City, and others. Mrs. Halder followed her own train of thought and reclassified the above information. Her methods were very clear. She classified Luo Nan's interactions with his family and friends in the secular world into one category. She classified Luo Nan's interactions with members of the inner world into one category. In addition, she classified Luo Nan's discussions of cultivation theory and lectures into one category. Inla looked at the rearrangement of all kinds of information and thought about what Mrs. Halder had said before. She had a faint understanding. "Boss, you want to start with Luo Nan's personality? Subdivide the persona?" Mrs. Halder just minded her own business and just nodded slightly. The so-called persona was a relatively traditional concept of psychoanalysis. It roughly referred to a set of systematic patterns produced by the human body in order to adapt to the outside world. It could also be said that it was the outer layer of one's personality that concealed one's true self. Simply speaking, the persona was a person's social nature. Every person had many kinds of masks. Each mask was a facet of their social nature. When put together, they would form a complete personality. This concept originated from Jung's personality analysis psychology theory at the beginning of the last century. This theory was no longer at the forefront of academia, but it could still play a role in related fields. This was especially true for its core personality holism, which treated the mind as the object of research. It had a miraculous synergy with the mind and soul, which was why it was more suitable for use on ability users. In recent years, the otherworld variant of this theory had maintained a certain level of popularity. Inlu was the vice officiant of the Bloodflame Order. Even if she had always been a little neglectful, she still had to study the control of the believer's desires. With Madame Halder's reminder, she immediately had a lot of ideas. But she also understood that these hasty thoughts couldn't withstand serious scrutiny, so she still asked honestly, "What's the matter? Boss, is there any chance for us to cut in? That depends on whether we can accurately capture his dominant mask." According to this theory, there was no distinction between the real and the fake when everyone had multiple masks. One just needed to look at which mask was used the most often to be considered the dominant mask. It could basically encompass the most basic personality traits. However, there were many times when there was more than one dominant mask. Madame Halder already had a basic judgment. Luo Nan is a relatively simple person. Right now, he has several external masks, and he can more or less form a complete personality. She pulled out the list of information on Luo Nan's interactions with his family and friends. She arranged them in chronological order, forming a fairly clear timeline. There's no need to mention this person's miserable childhood. It has certainly influenced his personality traits. Luo Shuqing and Mo Haiheng have become his guardians, and their attitudes and behavior have been extremely positive. They even dote on him a bit as compensation. Their biological children are actually inferior to him in terms of treatment. He is the one being taken care of in his family and in normal social relationships. From the information, we can see that Luo Nan's older cousin, Mo Ya, is quite powerful. His older cousin, Mo Peng, is quite lively, but he is quite protective of Luo Nan. The stimulation of these two personalities, as well as the difference in treatment, will likely push him to grow in the opposite direction. This is because this will allow him to maximize his profits. This interaction has caused him to be both sensitive and introverted, but he is also obedient and low-key. He has displayed a weak and passive side. Inla concluded in a low voice, the weaker he is, the more he is favored. Of course, this wasn't the result of Luo Nan taking the initiative to exert his strength. Instead, it was the long-term effects of his unconscious infiltration. Yes, this is Luo Nan's mask of weakness. It is the mode of communication he is most accustomed to using over the years. Then this is one of his dominant masks? Madame Halder didn't directly confirm this. Instead, she interrupted her analysis and observed Luo Nan's corner through Fei Jin's eyes. At this time, Luo Nan was conversing with Tianxi in the corner. Madame Halder and Inla didn't use any supernatural methods, due to their fear of this master of perception. They just used their professional lip-reading abilities to guess the conversation between the two. The subject of the conversation was still Professor Panwan. The old woman's sharp personality and attitude, as well as her intense mood swings, made Luo Nan a bit unsure. His mind was in a mess. Most of the time, it was Tianxi who comforted him. This was probably Luo Nan's behavior under the guidance of the mask of weakness. It could be seen that Tianxi wasn't quite used to it. She most likely never expected that she would use this sort of position to communicate with Luo Nan. She was facing a weak, unconfident, and even sentimental little Shota. This gave her quite a bit of trouble, as she wholeheartedly hoped to hug his thigh. Even Inla felt a bit strange, let alone Tianxi. This was completely incompatible with Professor Luo, who was currently at the peak of his power. Fortunately, her train of thought grew clearer. Though I don't approve of the diagnosis of latent did, from the relevant data, the separateness and contradiction of his mask of weakness are quite obvious. In contrast to the mask of weakness, there must be a mask of strength that possesses a dominant strength. Madame Halder simply said, "You analyze it." This. Inla hesitated a bit. She simply took Madame Halder's preliminary categorization of the data. She copied Madame Halder and pulled out the records of Luo Nan's official contact with the inner world. She sorted them by time and sorted them out. Looking at the formation mechanism of the mask of weakness, there are two types: imitation and practical application. I feel that aside from the bits and pieces he learned from his family and friends, the greatest source of his paradigm and practical environment can only come from the inner world. Inla paused for a bit and stole a glance at her boss's expression. Only then did she continue to make inferences. From the relevant intelligence, Luo Nan was suddenly pushed into a high-danger level event. There was practically no buffer at all, and the intensity was extremely shocking. Luo Nan witnessed many casualties and unforeseen events with the human-faced arachnid. Then it was said that he directly participated in the underground fighting arena incident. He followed it from start to finish, and it involved high-intensity confrontations. The Frost River reality incident on Fudong Avenue involved high-intensity confrontations, large-scale killings, and he was heavily injured. Then there was Ocean Sky Cloud City. He directly killed people, and he killed 4 people at once. Then there was the series of conflicts in the municipal plaza. Extraordinary level attacks and defenses. The 2000s of a young lady incident. Let's not even talk about it. From this series of events, we can see the ecology of the inner world in Luo Nan's eyes. Of course, he personally experienced it. It was a continuous, intense, and high-intensity conflict. There was no lack of paradigms and environments. Luo Nan himself had the corresponding talent and ability. He quickly formed a direct, unyielding, and cruel mask of strength. It was reasonable. Mrs. Halder's expression didn't change. She asked without thinking, And then the mask of weakness that has always occupied a dominant position for over a decade was far too different from the mask of strength that had just been formed. It led to separation and conflict. Halfway through her words, Inli's gaze swept across the information that had basically been categorized. However, there were clearly 3 groups of information. She suddenly became speechless. Halder didn't reprimand nor did he give any pointers. He continued to do the finishing work of categorizing the information. Instead, There were some changes in the corner where Luo Nan was located several dozen kilometers away. Tianxi's face revealed an astonished expression. She hesitated for a moment before getting up and sitting next to Luo Nan. The two of them leaned against each other, looking quite intimate. Some people subconsciously curled their lips at the two tables of the Mystic Arts Research Society, but no one dared to open their mouths to say anything. Let's turn back time to half a minute ago. Tianxi had been struggling with Luo Nan's weak and wavering emotions ever since she returned to her seat. No matter how hard she tried, she found it hard to find the cold and callous element of subsonic life, taking control of the demon from this youth. However, there was a very subtle sensation. A corner of her heart churned as she looked at Luo Nan like this. Just when she thought that the time they spent together tonight was about to be exhausted by this bizarre scene, Luo Nan's wristband vibrated. Ding dong. A message entered Luo Nan's private mailbox. It was a notification. Luo Nan was stunned. His main communication tools were the hexa ear and his wristband. He mainly used instant messaging and messages. He would occasionally use the cloud space. This mailbox was only used for identity registration. It was practically in a half-abandoned state. Why would someone send him a message? He lowered his head, and the wristband's intelligence captured the corresponding stimulus. A virtual interface popped up, highlighting the title and sender of the message. The title of the message was the default no topic. But under the rules of social authority, all formal communication on the internet required real name authentication. So Luo Nan saw a name that he could intuitively perceive. Chapter 628. This is Professor Pan's email number? Luo Nan was greatly surprised. Tianxi tilted her head to size it up. She confirmed, that's right. This is Professor Pan's private email. She set up her own server. I still remember the domain name. The content of the email was just a link. Luo Nan clicked on it without hesitation. The link led to a cloud space. Encryption measures were set up here. It was a privilege encryption. Only visitors allowed by the owner of the cloud space could enter with their ID. Luo Nan didn't pay much attention to the encryption method. He cut into the interface, and his gaze fell on the highest folder in the cloud space. His gaze was a bit blank. The only folder that could be displayed was named Applied Research on the Coupled Design of Modern Architecture, Draft. Luo Nan clicked on the folder 2 seconds later, and a message appeared. The target folder was approximately 4 petabytes in size. There were several folders and files inside. This storage number wasn't large, but it wasn't small either. Some people wouldn't be able to store a lifetime's worth of experience inside, but in some fields, it didn't seem to be much. Luo Nan's fingers trembled slightly and he clicked on it. A traditional window interface was laid out. The densely packed folders gave people a headache at first glance. But from another perspective, every folder was named according to an obvious rule. Letters, numbers, and words were clearly layered. One could vaguely feel the structure and flow of a certain system if one looked at it carefully. Luo Nan scrolled through the interface and scrolled down to the bottom. The interface naturally captured the only document file on the interface. The name was exactly the same as the folder on the upper layer. Applied Research on the Coupled Design of Modern Architecture, Draft. Luo Nan's face twitched. He clicked on it again and sure enough, it was a thesis. Since it was a draft, the format was relatively casual. His gaze skimmed over it, and it fell on the author's signature below the title. It was impossible for him to overlook it, and it was impossible for him to forget it. Bo Qingwen. Luo Nan's gaze froze. He subconsciously scrolled through the interface during this time, but the words, tables, and diagrams inside seemed to have lost all meaning. Or perhaps his brain had lost the ability to accept and understand. It wasn't until he flipped to the end of the thesis that he saw the scattered sentences that were clearly unfinished, as well as the deliberately left blank space. Only then did he vaguely grasp a bit of context. Senior, come over here. Luo Nan didn't even know how he opened his mouth to speak. Tianxi hesitated for a moment. She was most likely frightened by Luo Nan's expression and tone, but she still got up and sat beside him. His gaze, which he had intentionally shifted to avoid arousing suspicion, was now naturally directed towards the virtual interface. At this time, Luonan had already brought the interface back to the first page of the article, revealing the title and author. When Tianxi saw these, she also jumped in fright and almost cried out, "Yes, senior sister, my mind is in a mess now and I can't remember clearly. You've checked the relevant information. Is this one among my mother's published papers?" Tianxi immediately replied, "No, definitely not." "Really?" Luonan grinned. "This gift from Professor Pan is really..." His fingers unconsciously slid across the screen, and the interface also scrolled up and down. Beside him, Tianxi said, "Junior, look at this table of contents. It doesn't look like a thesis, but more like a book, an academic monograph." Luonan was a bit startled. He followed the direction of Tianxi's finger and looked. Then he immediately switched to the folder interface. But there were at least 100 folders of the same level. It was impossible to count them all at once. He decided to open up the system and look at the attributes. With just one glance, he had an idea. As expected, there are more than 4,000 folders of different levels and more than 100,000 documents. If they are all reference materials for the thesis, it would be too exaggerated. But if it's a book, then it seems like it has just begun. He looked at the last edited date. It was actually May 2080, a little over a month before he was born. Luonan estimated that his mother should be in the wilderness at that time. No, it was also possible that Professor Pan had started writing. Luonan's mind was in a mess. Right now, it really wasn't suitable for him to do more complex analysis. He could only forcefully turn his gaze away. And at this time he saw new information on the side of the system interface. It was the list of visitors who had access to the cloud space. Of course Luonan was on the list, and there were only 3 people who had access to the cloud space. One of them was Professor Pan 1. Right now he was displayed as logged in. As for the other 2 gray names, Bo Qingwen Luo Zhongheng, the interface suddenly closed. This was done by Luonan. This was because he might not be able to control his emotions in another half a second. In fact, at this moment, the tea on the table was already rippling. "Let's go." Luonan didn't dare to sit any longer. He got up in a bit of a hurry, raised his head, and took a deep breath. Beside him, Tianxi got up to make way. She asked, "Let's go." Luonan didn't say anything. He walked straight out, and Tianxi hurried to keep up. The two left the water bar with quick steps, causing the group of people from the Mystic Arts Research Society to let out sighs of relief. Previously, whether they should stay or leave had already made them very conflicted. Fortunately, after passionate love and intimate contact, they left first. Someone mumbled, "He's definitely going to vent." "Shut up." Shouts rang out in unison, forcefully suppressing this idiot who didn't know the difference between life and death. Fei Jin watched with a smile. She didn't react. But 2 minutes later, she found a random reason and took her leave, separating from this group of people. She didn't care about the discussions of the people behind her. She didn't plan on wasting time in Ocean Sky Cloud City, so she went straight back. With Luonan's situation, it was impossible for him to stay too long in this crowded area. Otherwise, the security personnel by his side would probably go crazy. Right now, there were 2 possibilities. One was to go home. The other was to return to gear on the North Bank. With Fei Jin's status, she could only choose the latter. She took the elevator to the 3rd floor underground and prepared to take the short tram back to school. But just as she squeezed out of the elevator with the stream of people, her mind suddenly stirred. She raised her head and saw Luonan's figure standing in the corner up ahead. He seemed to be talking to someone. Tianxi stood to the side, quite a distance away. She even turned her face away a bit unnaturally. Clearly, she hadn't blended in with the conversation. Her role was quite awkward. As for the person talking to Luonan, he was leaning against the wall. From Fei Jin's angle, only half of his brightly colored sportswear could be seen. He looked very young. The 2 controllers behind Fei Jin did not expect this to happen. This was indeed a chance encounter. But if it wasn't handled well, It would be no different from being followed in the eyes of Luo Nan, a master of perception. Luckily, Fei Jin's main controller was rich in experience. She didn't change the frequency of her steps. She continued to walk forward, and she even called out a greeting when she got closer. As expected, Luo Nan turned his head to glance at her. His face was expressionless, but Tianxi next to him turned her head. She was a bit surprised. Tianxi's actions made the person on the other side of the corner lean over in curiosity. He whistled and said, "Another beauty. Your talent in this area isn't bad." His lively and frivolous reaction was indeed that of a young man. But at this moment, the two first ablatums, who were several dozen kilometers away, were the ones who were shocked. "Tianbang!" Yinlu cried out involuntarily. She was shocked, but there was also loathing and hatred. That's right. The person in the corner was Tianbang, who had made a name for himself some time ago. This burner, known as the number one person beneath extraordinaries, was dressed in overly gaudy casual sports attire. He was like a Chinibyu youth who couldn't keep up with the trends. But it was this person who had stepped on Mo Luan and the Bloodflame Order, and leaped up to stand at the center of the world stage. He was the mortal enemy of the Bloodflame Order. This was without a doubt. Such a mortal enemy had suddenly appeared before their eyes. Moreover, he was conversing intimately with another important target. What in the world was going on? The two controllers could not help but have similar thoughts in their minds. And at the scene, Fei Jin's footsteps stopped for a moment. Her gaze swept past Tianbang's face. Her eyes were mixed with a series of micro-expressions of curiosity, astonishment, and realization. In the end, her focus returned to Luo Nan, Junior's friend. "I won't disturb you any longer. You guys chat." Fei Jin smiled as she spoke. She gave a slight bow and walked a few steps to the side. She turned her head in a very natural manner and sized up Tianbang with a few glances. Then she turned her head and left. As the first mate, Yinlu admired Mrs. Halder's control of her emotions and details to the point of prostrating herself. Fei Jin, who had been under Mrs. Halder's control just now, had perfectly displayed the subtlety of a member of the outer circle encountering a heavyweight character like Tianbang. She had successfully recognized and secretly restrained herself. Forceful words were all about the details, but the most wonderful thing was still the word natural. The automatic conveyor belt brought Fei Jin far away. Yinlu was still reflecting on the subtlety of their encounter when Mrs. Halder spoke. "Did you feel it?" Tianbang's current position had already exceeded the range of Fei Jin's natural perception. Yinlu would not make a low-level mistake and forcefully use an ability user's ability to detect him. So for a time, she really couldn't understand. She frowned and said, "Tianbang appeared here." "I'm not talking about Tianbang. What does the matter we're currently handling have to do with Tianbang?" "Luo Nan?" Yinlu struggled to free her attention from Tianbang with great difficulty. She seriously recalled Luo Nan's previous performance. It seems that his relationship with Tianbang is quite cold. "Do you have a more precise description?" Mrs. Halder's tone seemed to be a bit dissatisfied. Yinlu just felt a mountain of pressure. She racked her brains to ponder, practically replaying the series of observations she had of Luo Nan before, and after they left the elevator. She thought over and over before speaking. He's absent-minded. He's a bit impatient." His eyelids drooped. He has no interest in Tianbang's words. At the same time, the tips of his feet turned outward, and his body leaned to the side. He's been wanting to leave. Why did such a situation occur? Oh, it's very likely that he received important information that needed to be processed. His and Tianxi's expressions and actions were quite obvious when we were at the water bar. Mrs. Halder continued to ask questions, not giving Yinlu a chance to catch her breath. This is the main reason why Luo Nan is impatient. But when faced with a person like Tianbang, even if he doesn't have a deep hatred like we do, and even if he isn't a close friend, he is still a stakeholder. Don't tell me that he doesn't have the slightest desire to socialize? Yinlu muttered to herself. He's always been introverted. He's not good at socializing. What's the reason for this situation? Do you remember our conclusion from before? Luonen has a mask of weakness and a mask of strength. If the mask of weakness was in effect, then he should have displayed a courteous, respectful, or shy appearance just now in order to obtain Tianbang's favorable impression. If the mask of strength was in effect, then sparks would have long since exploded between the two. And no matter what kind of mask it is, it wouldn't have this sort of effect. Inlu responded instinctively, he has a third mask. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.